and it's an excellent question, and I'll repeat it.
No, how do you define Erakal Bat Musa? How do you define within the Erakal Bat Musa?
You have a look at the Sichos Chelik Yud here. Let's start with that. Question. I'll repeat it. Good? Yeah. I'm losing my mind, I think. It's Chelik Yud, Yud Aleph.
You're losing your mind, how are you thinking?
Part of it is still working. I know, there's a reason, this is by Mishnah Gay directly. It's Chelik Yud. They're so thin, they used to be a lot... Chelik Tezvav, sorry. Sorry, I'm making you crazy. I'm relying on my memory banks from many years ago. Yeah, this is for sure. The truth is like this, you know, we're learning Ayin Beis inside, and the emes, anything, any sugya here needs hours of introduction. I'm saying even to the Eidei Sefer, because we spoke about this a few times, because the Bituim and the Lashenis of Chassidus are, even though Chassidus Chabad officially is explaining Kabbalah, but it's just like Kabbalah, Mal Kalam Sevu Kalam. We know the basics, and everyone understands that Mal Kalam is the Chayes inside, but because first of all, the thinking is not spatial. It's not like a table and a chair. So it's a new training of how to think. You're thinking about things that are invisible. And that itself requires, how do you think abstractly? And most of us don't think abstractly. So that's one thing that needs Pasha training. It's a conditioning, it's a training, how to think like that. Like guys like Richard Feynman or the big physicists, they were masters of teaching students how to think differently. You have to think a different way when you think in these musogim. And Zweitens, the etzem musogim are on a surface level, one thing. When you go deeper, it's a whole different thing. Like Bechal, what means Lifnei Tzimtzum? Talk about Erakal. What means Lifnei Tzimtzum altogether? We're told that the whole existence doesn't happen until the Tzimtzum. So what means before existence? And tell me. But I'm just adding questions because it's important to see. Someone asked, the world is 5,771 years old. So you think, what was the second before that? So the answer usually is there's no second before, there's no before is man. But then the question is, how do you think? What is that? So Abish says l'mayla mizman. So how does what's going on? The question itself can drive you crazy. Start thinking. So what's that? So a second before Bereshis, there was no second. But was there a before? So you don't call it before. I understand that before is even now here. You can say because
no, there's before also not in his mind.
How's it before now? From a book, he's talking from his mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No. So it's not. The point I'm asking is, so when you say,
but that question is that even every child asks that question.
Yeah.
By the way,
that's the answer.
Hold on. Leibel Bestrutsky wrote to the Rebbe in the early years. It's also printed in English before the Nesius. He wrote him a question. What's the difference between Elam HaKisei, Elam HaMalochim, Elam HaKisei, the Elam HaIfanim? You know, whatever that was. And then he apologizes to the Rebbe for asking such a klotz kasha for the Chanarish kasha to everyone. And the Rebbe starts off with, don't apologize, halavai gresed the maskilim would ask these questions, because the klotz kashas, and Aleph Beis from Chassidus, nobody asks. You ask, you know, because remember, the Chassidus doesn't start with the Hagdomas. The first Rebbe, Alter Rebbe, or Chassidus just goes right into the Inyanim. There's no introductions really to it. And besides that, they didn't teach us Chassidus properly in yeshiva altogether. Definitely not all these are room. So the truth is, we're learning it. We're going right into not only we're going. Ayin Beis is the Mount Everest. Is the deepest of all. There's nothing deeper than Ayin Beis. As the Rebbe gesagt. So even a simple mimer is, and if you really want to understand, I'm saying this as Akdama. It's not just about Eir HaKol, about Smusei and stuff like that. It requires a lot of, and the truth is, when I was learning, I used to talk to Yale, Meir Svidman. Rab Meir. No, we could say Yale. Gesagt, Abaye, Rov, Chatsche,
Avram,
Heischke.
Avram Ayar used to say, no? Yeah.
When first came in Kiddush.
Okay, fine.
Avram Ayar sagt sagen, Avram Stam, ist Avram Avinu. Reb Avram, das bin ich.
Right, that's good. I don't mean to disrespect you anyway. The point I'm making of all this is that they had different couple, different masculine. Rabbi Yale comes Makabel from Moshe Gerari. Rabbi Moshe Gerari also.
The only guy.
Okay. Moshe Gerari.
You
Moshe
didn't learn
Gerari
from
was
Moshe
Makabel.
Gerari.
Huh?
You didn't learn from Moshe Gerari. You learned from the jail.
No.
Do me a favor. I was Avedist and not giving the right titles to people. The Rebbe once said in the Fabrengen, Yisrael und the Rebs sollen alle zugeben noch, Reb, and the others sollen zugeben sehr Rebs. I can't stand the Rebbe said it. But the point is that they were all Makabel. So Moshe Gerari was Makabel from Greinim, things they heard from the Rebbe. The Torah Shabbat Peh of Chassidus. And there's different ways of understanding. Moshe Gerari's approach was very afshatadik, and very much understanding it in a whole different way. And there's different shittas, even talking about. It's just like there's like even learning nigla is the way to learn through pilpul or through there's the different shittas. They're all legitimate. In Chassidus Gufa, there's also ways to understand lifnei tzimtzum and stuff like that. So I personally lean mostly because to me it speaks to me is the psychological approach. What do I mean by psychological? B'sari agzelaka. Because you can't identify with these concepts unless you find it within yourself. What I mean, that Elif Nat Simpson has to be, what's the Elif Nat Simpson in the Eilim Katan Zeh Adam? That's how I identify easy, because then you also have a point of reference. When you talk about a pure Hafshat and Mamish, there's a lot of ways to explain it, a lot of ways to explain it. So if you want me to go give some asbar on this whole suit, there's no problem. But we're stepping aside from Ayin Beis just through the record.
Right, it's Reishei.
No, I understand, but you're talking now, it's more than that. You're talking about what is Eir and what is Atzmus. You can't just talk about
Reishei, that we learned in the previous house.
Verstehe, but it's more than just a beer and Reishei. It's a beer in the Musag.
He's saying he's masking.
I understand. And just in
We
case...
can have a vote?
No, I have no
I'm
problem
masking.
doing it, huh?
I'm masking.
We can have a
We're not
vote. Whoever's
dictators
not
over
masking with me, Moshe. You're masking with me. We'll have a vote. Whoever's not masking.
I believe in dictatorships. So I'm not even joining this vote.
So let's vote who's going to be the dictator.
Wait, do they dictatorships have democracies?
Okay.
They all have votes, elections, and America forcing them elections?
I think that, and honestly, this is the thing that's least spoken about. I don't know if you ever heard of a sefer called Shemer Amunim. You heard Shemer Amunim? Shemer Amunim Yosef Irgas, the Makubal, a Pesach. So the Talmidim, huh?
The Mitzvah is Talmidim.
No, he's a Talmud of Talmidei Arizal, not Talmidei. Gurei Arizal they call it.
Gure?
So Allah Gurei Arizal.
Talmidim and Talmidim?
Yeah. The descendants of, So he's quoted Chassidus, so he's a completely legitimate. He has a sefer called Shemer Amonim, which is a vikuach between a Makubal and a Balnigla, a skeptic type of guy. And there, a lot of you say this, like why they're Esesphiris, what is Eir, why do you need all these things, what's Simtsum? He talks about it. It's Gvaldik sefer. I many times wanted to translate it into English, because it's mamish reliable, and he writes a very contemporary way. And he's completely reliable. He's not a modern guy. He's not like a guy trying to explain
There's
it.
a Kabbalah way of this.
No, but it's very seichelic. He explains it very, why do you need it for? Why do you need to know there's SSV? The guy assessed him. He said,
Derech Emunah.
It's not called Derech Emunah. It's called...
Moshe Rebbe spoke about Derech Emunah.
Derech Emunah has similar from Ban Gabbai, from Vedas, okay. But this is much more fundamental. You read that, you answer a lot of questions, because it's very, as you say this thing, it's coming from a Talmud of Arizal. So he asks a lot of these type of questions, like, what, if you're Ish Halacha, you learn Shulchan Aruch, what do you need to know as Sfiras? What's Felkuzais? Etc., etc. And why is it Negeya? So let me just, I think I said this the first time I came here, but let me just, to explain. I was opening this up because there's a letter from the Rebbe about this, okay?
Okay, look.
It says Volvo, page 473 and 474. I'll read it in a minute, but because it's a Meidic explanation, Lifnei Atzimtzum, in the ways that we can understand. But you see from this how far we are away when we read this. It is the Rebbe explaining it to someone. I think.
But that's before the Nesius.
Yeah. Tafshin Tes. Yudches Tevis Tafshin Tes. There was a lot of people who write the Rebbe these type of questions. There's a letter to Binyaminson about the 4 different shittas and Simtsum. Stuff like this that you don't find directly in Chassidus. It's the room from Chassidus. Also, Teira Shalom for the Rebbe Rashab is Meidic in this because he speaks off the record. A lot of things that are here, you get the picture. Generally speaking, I'll just say a few key things that I think are critical. Let's start with this. I said this many times here. Kabbalah and Chassidus alike come to answer one fundamental question. Achdus, that's the dilemma. How can a world that is a world, first of all, diverse, Schalkus, connect to Hashem Echad, which is one? Simple. God is one. He's not made of pieces. The world is made of both parts. How could parts connect to one? One big dilemma. The second dilemma
Everybody
is...
assumes we understand what it means Hashem Echad.
It's a Pashta Kasha. One and
It doesn't
diverse.
bother me as long as Hashem Echad is not.
Okay, but for the record, 3,000 years of Kabbalah, it did bother.
Because they understood Hashem
No,
Echad.
because it starts from a klotz kasha. It doesn't bother you because you don't have other things to
Because
worry
they don't
about.
understand what Hashem Echad means.
No, because you're busy with parnas and yoni. Why would you care? Why would you care? Why should it bother you? They bothered by
He's asking a
Hello?
question that's presuming that I understand Hashem
Hello?
Echad. So maybe when a person understands Hashem Echad, he has a kasha. How
Hello?
can a world which is not Echad
Right.
connect with Hashem, which is Echad?
What's the problem?
That can only bother a person when he understands Hashem Echad.
no person who cares
Even
about
the
Hashem.
Yeshiva. The question when you don't understand Hashem Echad, the question you just asked is a semantics question. It's a question in words that the book is asking.
It's not a semantic question at all. It's a very
It's a wonderful question.
no, it's a very important because, as a matter of fact, that's why many people when you say that. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Is today good? I don't know. I'm not sure. Can you call me a little later and we'll talk about it? Okay, so call me in the early afternoon and we'll talk about it. Okay.
No.
Okay, fine.
Very interesting.
You look.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Sure.
It's not correct. That's why many people feel that God does not have a relationship with this world because He's in a different domain. Exactly, because you can't understand Him.
He's higher, he's greater, he's beyond us. That's a different thing.
It's a simple question. You're making a question that's so simple into a complicated question.
I'm not knocking the question.
But it's a basic. Every child asks this question. That's why most people will say, and even the Gdei Yisrael will say that God is too great for this world because this world is an inferior world that's divided. That's a world of Ra, which I was leading to. So there's a lot of questions. This world and God are not compatible. That's the bottom line. And the dilemma that the Kabbalah had, how do you make them compatible? How does that sound?
Got it.
Okay. Now, what is not compatible? One is Schalkus and Achdus. One is mortality. Everything dies. God is Nitzchis. How could they come together? It's either Nitzchi or it dies. Another is this is a world of Ra. There's no Ra Elamayla. You can go on and on and on. And so this is a big dilemma. Now, there's a question before this question. Who says there has to be Achdus? Maybe God didn't want Achdus, but...
That's what he was saying.
You say who says there has to be achdus between the Eibush and the world?
Right.
Ah.
Yeah. So that also is a whole thing. You could say that maybe God just wants to create a world and then destroy it, and Achdus takes over. Who says it? But that's where it comes in the whole sugya of that the Eibush wanted this world, did it b'tachtenim. Even without Chassidus, just the idea that He wanted us to refine this world. It wasn't just to come down here and discover that God is superior and destroy the world. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I'm not going through all the dilemmas because I don't go all the way to Bereshis, but this is a fundamental problem. And so there were daily Yisrael, and this is many in the way the real Musnagdim. I mean, when I say real, the ones that did it in Shita, right, or the ones that held that Primis HaTeira shouldn't be taught to everybody, basically felt that even if these questions are legitimate, it's not for Reiv Ha'amein Am to get involved in. Ein Lon Esek V'Nistaris, Malafon and Mala'acher is not our business, etc., etc. That's why the Rebbe always calls that Arizal said mitzvah legal zeis hachachma, and the Baal Shem Tov said Yefutz Mashiach said Yefutz Menesach Hachutza. The Rabbein, in other words, it's not just someone came up was trying to spread Primus HaTeira. It's Mamaila, just like the spreading of Nigla the Teira. There came a time to write Mishnah, Gemara. There came a time to Megal Primus HaTeira. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe clearly our approach is that this is for the Hamein Am. Not everyone's going to understand it like the level versteht like the. So the bottom line is, if Yiddishkeit just demanded from us a Munah, Pshuta, and Kabbalah sale, like an Eved Ha'adin, all this would not concern us. Because an Eved, all he has to know is what his master tells him to do. Put on film, keep Shabbos, eat kosher, do the mitzvahs, and everything else doesn't matter to you. No one's asking, you don't have to understand why I'm ordering you to do these things. That's Kabbalah sale b'tarasa. Nothing else. Like a child, like a 1-year-old, you tell your child, do not cross the street. If you cross the street, I'll punish you. It makes no difference whether you understand or you don't understand. I know it's not good for you. Well, you know. So, Torah says clearly not just lahaimin, but da'asa lekeavicha, v'yadaitis Hashem lekecha, v'shaveis el v'ovecha, v'haftas Hashem lekecha b'chal vavcha b'chal nafshecha olmedecha. All these on and on, not one. Throughout, the Eibush is saying l'shenis, he wants you to love him. He doesn't want you to just follow him. He wants you to understand him. So this is mechayev, that there has to be some relationship. We talked about this a while back, but just repeating, this is critical to the whole picture. He wants a relationship, and that's where everything gets complicated. Because if it's a relationship, so now he wants us to, not only does he want us to connect, he wants us to understand it. The Alter Rebbe writes in Geras HaKedesh that learned Seder Shtalshus is the mitzvah geveya ramag nosa geveya me'ed. You know that where he talks higher than all the mitzvahs, because it's the mitzvah of understanding the Eibishter. Means it's a relationship. Doing a mitzvah is gewaldig. You connect, but to be able to comprehend it is a whole other thing. So this also is mechayev, that the Eibishter gave us the capacity to understand him. So now you're getting into a whole new thing. It's not just he created some creature, some puppet, or some like animal or a servant. He created an entity that's similar. That's why the Torah starts, a human being is created b'tzelem Elokim. We have tchunas that are godly. This means we have the keches. Right away in the beginning of Tanya it says the eser keches and nefesh and the shtalshul from the eser sfiras l'mayla. So that means you and I are shaped in some way in Atzelem Elokim. However you understand it, we're not just. So we are become a bridge. You don't talk about Mumutzayim. We're become a bridge. That means our seichel, who's shaped. Why is 2 plus 2 is 4? Why are the rules of nature and logic are this way? Because that's the divine mind at work. And he gave us a mind that is similar to his mind. So when you learn the rules of nature even, you're learning really how God thinks. Some scientists don't deny that, that's their problem. But the chachma of Welt, why is the world a logical world? How could you even create rules? Maybe it's a chaotic world. How is it possible? Because God created the world with logic. So this brings us to the whole picture of the whole Seder Shtalshus. This is why you need Tzimtzum and why you need Eir, because all that are all pieces in creating this understanding. In
other words, he didn't have to create the world with logic.
Absolutely not.
He chose
in
to
Ayin Beis, in several places. Now the Rebbe Rashab says this before. See, this before the Rebbe Rashab, this was not said. The Rebbe Rashab says in some Maimorim that all of Im Ratza Kadosh Baruch, he could have made the whole thing without seichel. And that he chose to make seichel, and make seichel the way it's right now, the seichel. Could have made a different type of seichel. So in other words, the whole thing starts that the Eibishter wanted to create a structure. And that structure is essentially the whole picture of Lifnei Tzimtzum, Nachon Tzimtzum. I'm just saying this because this is critical. And then the question then is, what are all these pieces? What role do they all play? And that's, of course, a lifetime journey. Every piece, what is Abriya, what is Asiya, what is Briya,
it's like learning all the sciences of the world would be a lifetime pursuit.
Exactly. Now here's the thing. This is critical. Going out to The dilemma becomes more complicated when you already start reviewing it. It becomes like this. So we're talking about a relationship between two opposites. In our mind, is opposites. Remember, let's again. The Eibush is nimnam nimnois. He had, from the Eibush's point of view, you can say there's no problem with having a relationship between a mortal world and an immortal God, or a world of Ischalkus and a world of Ardus. You know what I say before? Incompatible. The Eibush is nimnam nimnois and neisa havchin. But we have a problem with that. So then, if it's only the Eibush's terms, we're back to square one. There's no two relationships. It would be like the master created seichel, but only he understands it. The slave can never understand it anyway. And he created a seichel where by us a stira is a real stira. So you could say in Inyan, no problem. God is one. Created a world of diversity. We don't understand it, and it's a paradox. Fine. God by God, there's no paradoxes. He has no problem that it can be dark and light at the same time. I mean, we can understand in a world that thinks like that, but we don't relate to such a world. By us, everything is something contradicts. It's a contradiction. So did God want us to drop all the laws of logic and just accept contradictions? Absolutely not. So therefore, now we're back to the question: is how do we understand in logic and our logic a God that is? So this becomes that you have to say, therefore, the Eibush could also manifest himself in this type of logic. So in truth there's always remains a madrega of Elikus Atzmus, what we call, that's beyond our language. That's where you'll find that it comes in Chassidus, Atzmus. Because in Atzmus, the whole thing is a different perspective. And this is one critical component, because when Chassidus talks about this, the ultimate biggest dilemma really is not how Gvul and Bli Gvul get connected. Because there's many ways to explain it. It's how does a God that's completely not run by our logic and chose this logic connect to this logic? Because you could say, okay, he created a certain system, but ultimately are we connecting to him and his etzem, or are we connecting to him and the system that he created? And then we're back to square one. What's the relationship with? This is a big, big dilemma in Kabbalah. The Samach Vov and Vayelech, he addresses this in very hafshata cases, but here's the dilemma.
In other words, he's saying that even...
I'm going to explain. Let me just say. So let's say after all is said and done, okay. So what we've established is that God created a world, a certain type of world. In many ways, it's always, it's incompatible with Elokus, with Asmus. But he created a system that through the system we can find compatibility. Okay? Then the question is, however...
That's what? That's Simpson.
The whole stage of everything. Created a whole structure and made us. We're not just a creature. You're not just a table. You have a neshama, that's its chelik al-kamimal. You have seichel that works like the Eibush seichel. You have to align yourself to it. But I mean, you were created in the image of godliness. Okay, and now we have to. So we have a common denominator here. He didn't just create a shtickle holtz. It would be the equivalent of you creating something that's like yourself, or you created something that just serves you. He didn't create something that just serves. He created something that's similar. But with Bechira, so we have Aveda. Fine. But the question is, at the end of the day, Mashiach comes. Everything is perfect. Are we connecting really to the real God, or are we connecting to this structure that he created where we meet? And this is a big deal. This is ultimately what Chassidus Chabad comes in. The Alter Rebbe says, where the Rabbi Rashab says, Chidush Gadol, Chidush Admur Hazok. This is the biggest Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe, the Chidush of Eir. I'm going to address now what Eir comes to do. Why?
Chidush from Arizal, not from...
No, the Chidush is from the Alter Rebbe. The concept existed in Zayah.
By the way, it was an Ayin Beis also. It was an Ayin Beis.
It's part of the Moir, and it's also...
The Chiddush
You're not saying that Alter Rebbe's Chiddush is using...
No, not the word Eir. The Eir is a word in Zayah.
Yeah.
No, that Eir is Kodim Kodim. The Eir... Again, it's a Chiddush Simachov. That's the bottom line. I'll explain what the Chiddush is. You have a Samach Vov here?
Yeah, he has it right there in Tzibur from that whole... The Zel Chiddush Chabad.
It's Vayelech.
Yeah, Vayelech.
He quotes from over there.
That's probably the most you say is the combined in all Chiddush.
Eir itself.
Vayelech Samach Vov. Because he explains this problem.
He said in Kabbalah the cases, he said, not this is Russian cases.
Ramak, Kesher, Ein Sof, the whole thing, yeah. But I wrote a whole article. This is one of the articles I wrote on Samach Vov on this piece.
Yeah, I have it on my iPhone.
Okay.
I don't have it on my iPad to download it.
We live in
I'm one step ahead of you.
And we went there is another Chiddush from there. What else was that?
No, you mean, and we learned the Chiddush Rabbi Yisrael. Yeah.
We learned it
It
together.
wasn't about
Yeah,
oil.
yeah.
It wasn't that.
But yeah, the Chiddush Rabbi Yisrael.
You spoke about the Chiddush.
No, the Chiddush Rabbi Yisrael Tzimtzum. The Ramak LeYodem Iyin at Tzimtzum.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I gotta put that.
That's a good Chiddush to verbringen. That is al Mechazuk ben Tzimtzum. The Alter Rebbe Mechazuk ben Eid. That's good. Yeah. The Chiddush is Tzimtzum. And we learned the Perek.
Yeah, which one?
I'll show you. It's in the
You know what
Shvuas
size the
Maimon.
page was, right?
Here, right. Yeah, which one? This 500.
וזהו מה שחידש רבנו שמסיידים, דאר נקרא אין סייף מפני שהוא מעין המוער. That's the meaning.
In Sof. The 8 is in Sof.
Right here.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But once again, but this is a critical thing.
Good.
Here it is.
Same words?
Same words, אבל על פי החידוש, הנ"ל, תסך חידוש, גם אחרת.
The same word. This is taken from there.
Yeah, obviously.
Same word.
Yeah.
Beautiful like dumb, and it's better than the whole thing.
So you're
Yeah.
following so far?
I'm with you.
So here's the dilemma. Actually, here in Ayin Beis we're up to is actually talking about much lower Mutzayin. But the biggest dilemma comes down to the question of Atzmus itself. So fine, we established that the Eibishter created, let's pull it this way, some type of middle ground where he meets us. Like a Mishkan. The question is in the Mishkan, Shchanti B'Seichen, the Eibishter comes and the Mishkan is built with Tziyur of an Adam and the Mishkan is with Tziyur Alakus and say the Shtalshus, right? When we meet him on his terms or on our terms. The answer is partially his terms, partially our terms. But do we meet the real God? Is God unlevushim in ganzen? So here Mekubalim disagree. This is what he brings in Vayelach. Some say you can't meet the real one. But I shtedach. Lo yireini adam v'chai. You can't see me. Even Moshe. You see me, you will no longer exist. So you can't really meet Atzmus unlevushim result.
In your consciousness. You can have him.
No.
Nothing else.
You're bringing other things. We're talking here Pashat. I mean, the Eibishter told Moshe you can't see his face. You can only see his back. That's what it says. You can touch it how you want to touch it, but that's what it says. So the Chayre, you could argue that you can't reach the ultimate. As soon as you reach the ultimate, you can reach it, but you no longer will be you. You have to completely annihilate yourself to go there. You know. And I'm talking about in Atzmus. I'm not talking about Eidus and Stalshus and Atzilus. I'm talking about others say if that's the case, we're back to square one. So what's Menugetam? We connected to Lakus, Taka, but it's all Lakus in a limited way. So they say you could connect there, but you can't go as you. And that's the goal, that you become Ezich, Ez Messias. And Chassidus, Chabad comes and tries to reconcile. Doesn't try, it reconciles. You have to have both. The Eibishter wants a relationship all the way. When he said a relationship, he didn't play games. The Teirach Mushish and Atzmus. The Teirach says, V'avtas Hashem Elokecha means Kipshute, Elokecha, the real God. So there has to be some way. So then the question is, how does Atzmus, which is completely not in our Gedder, ever connect with us?
Yes.
So think of it this way. So let's say you climb all the steps of Seder Shtashos. Let's, for argument's sake, you reached everything. You reached the final point. There's one final step. How do you get into a whole different type of reality that put the whole thing in place in the first place? We're not talking about now
Structures.
Yeah, we're not even talking about. So here's where Eir becomes the critical.
Repeat that. I'm sorry. Where do you find the whole reality?
When you climb all the steps to the top,
Right.
and then there's the final step to get into Atzmus.
Right.
It seems like it's impossible. How do you get into the thing that put the whole thing into place? You know, so it's definitely an achievement that we have a Sachdus with Alakus. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to the Eibishter and etc. And there's a Mishkan, and you can make a Dira B'Tachtenim. But there's always one thing that remains beyond. That's Atzmus that we can never relate to. So there's the expression, you've heard the expression, Atzmus built to Mitzias Nimtza. That's the big dilemma. Because everything I said till now, you can have a connection to Alakus, the highest levels, but it's still in your
Part of the system.
it's somewhere the system can relate to. But when you talk about Mitzias built to Mitzias Nimtza, let me define what that means. It's a lashon from the Rambam. Chassidus brings it. It means everything that exists has a source. Everything that exists. Yeah. So, whereas Atzmus, number one, doesn't have a source. It that will never change. We will always have a source. So it's not just a small difference, it's a major difference. It's also the existence. When you say the Eibishter exists, it doesn't exist like we exist. We exist because we're here. You see a person, there's a certain a barometer that defines existence. God doesn't have any barometer. There's no barometer that makes God exist. He exists because he exists. We can't even relate to something like that. What does it mean? And therefore he doesn't exist like we. Everything has to have parameters. Even like a table, you and I, if you were not here, I wouldn't say you must exist. There's no must. Once you're here, you exist. You talk about a mitzvah built in mitzvah nimtza, you're talking about something that doesn't exist. The only reason you call it exists because you can't say it doesn't exist. That's another expression. Mitzvah built in mitzvah nimtza is higher than that even. But so in other words, you're dealing with something that's completely unlike our type of existence, something we can't even relate to. So how do we ever jump into that place? So here's where he says, Chiddush Rabbeinu Hazaken, Rabbeinu Agadol, Ein Sof, that is Me'in Hamoyer. And in one line, the best way to explain it is what I heard once from the Rebbe, Shem from the Rebbe. It's a Noske Gerari was by the Rebbe Yechidus, and the Rebbe told him these aces. Bittel kenish bottle werden. Bittel kenish bottle werden. Because Eir is bottle, because of its bittel, it can assume the personality of Metzias built in Metzias Nimtziva. Not because it's a Metzias, because it's Nishka Metzias. So anything that's a Metzias, like us, a Yesh or a Metzias, cannot identify with something that's not a Metzias. But Eir can enter there because Eir is Tachlis HaBittel, so it can reflect that. It doesn't have anything that's a stirit. And Eir basically is the place where Metzias built in Metzias Nimtza meets Metzias Nimtza. I can put it those ways. You follow what I'm saying? And that's the critical juncture. That's why. So then you could ask the question, but if I can't enter without bittul, then that's not me. That's why you need Aveda Sa'adam, Mama Darga, Chadarga, that you assimilate bittul. If right now the sun suddenly came into your eyes, it would blind you. But if after years and years you strained your eyes to see the sun, it wouldn't blind you.
You're trying to emulate the bittul of the air. You're trying to.
Yeah, exactly. You have to, in other words,
the two tchunas of the air.
So that's why you have all the madregas. That one madrega. That's why everything we're learning now. A little mitzias, a little not mitzias. You can't have completely no mitzias. What happened to the three people besides Rabbi Akiva and Pardes? They were blown away. They couldn't handle it. One died, one went mad, one went to, passed it. Because it was too much Eris. But let's say Rabbi Akiva, that's what he says in Samach Vav right in the beginning. Let's go with the Moshel. This Moshel is the best Moshel of it all. The Talmud and the Rav. They're infinitely apart. Infinitely. Not just a smarter Rav. Infinitely apart. So he asks in Samach Vav, what's the Chiddush of a Tzimtzum? And then make the Eir. Why don't you just leave the Eir?
Huh? What was the whole purpose of the
Kav?
Of the whole thing in the first place?
Why do you need a full Tzimtzum and then make a Kav? Just leave a Kav. So he says because the student is so far apart from the teacher. The teacher has to completely be silent and conceal everything. And then he begins the transmission. Now, when
What was the other option?
Lechatchila leave just a cow.
By the teacher. What was the other option by the teacher?
Yeah.
he should speak right away.
Speak a little bit instead of being quiet and then speak.
Well, that's the mashal that answers. And then he says, so what's the chiddush afterwards? So through all of our Aveda, of all shit, alpha shnin, what ends up happening? We fill up the air, the hole that was once air anyway there. So he says the chiddush is now there's a Talmud who can receive it. So all the Aveda is simply to reconnect to air. But then he says, there's a second chiddush that you can reach an air that wasn't there even lifnei atzimtzum. How does that work in the mashal? It works like this. So the student is infinitely apart. The teacher has to start with a complete concealment, okay? Then you start teaching a child. What do you teach a child? Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. If you looked at Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, all the seichel we know, you don't see it hidden in Aleph, Beis, Gimel. But we know that Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, one day, you'll be able to compose sentences and ideas and so on. The student starts growing. What's happening? If you try to be Megala, the Eir, to the student of what he's going to know when he's 40 years old, it'll never happen. On the contrary, you'll probably destroy his kelim. He'll become so confused. So you have a stream of consciousness, a kav, slow, slow, slow. Meanwhile, his mind expands. As his mind expands, he could hear more, start understanding more. He can come to a point where he can become just like his teacher. Because at some point, he can and then he can come to a point he supersedes his teacher. He understands deeper than a teacher. You see, there's Talmidim that are greater than the teachers. So what happened here is you have become a keli to Eir that was l'chadchila you were not even shaykh to see. It had to be completely concealed. Once you become the keli, then with bittul you can enter into something completely different. The mitzvah is built in mitzvah steps. So essentially we're retracing the steps. First you're creating yourself a keli to dargas that are lefierach, then to dargas that are shalei berach, and then to that which is completely in a different level. That's why Moshe, it says Shad HaNun, he couldn't reach to the last day of his life. Had Nevoi is Nun Boi. Because he needed the 40. It's like you can't have Matan Torah the 50th day without counting 49. And the 50th you can't count because it's not you. You'll see constantly this concept. But it's not the same thing to say, if it's not me entering in Matan Torah, so then I'm just like a little child that didn't count 49. No, you're not. Because you're a Keli now to enter a place that you could never have entered before. Now, you need to constantly, in all this journey, you need to constantly have two things going on. You following so far? You need to have something that fits your kelim and something that's beyond your kelim. It's like climbing a ladder. Your foot has to be on the lower rung as you climb to the higher rung. Then the next rung till the next. Hold on. That's why. Exactly. That's why you need to have. Exactly. No, I'm saying also, you need to always have, but in the Esis of Aveda, you need to always have a slapshus and seichel and a kabbalah seil and amunah for something higher. And as you climb, what was yesterday amunah is today be slapshus, and today's is slapshus, and now the amunah is to a higher madrega. So you're always seeing something beyond. It's like climbing a mountain. The horizon gets bigger. The question is, when you get to the top of the ladder, what happens? So the answer is through bittul, because you've now bittul is no longer stili to your mitzias. If you told a guy that's just beginning to learn, listen, I want you to be mivat your ego, your yesh, your mitzias, and you'll be a keli telekus. He's not shaykhted. You have to give it to him. That's why leilam yasakadim tered mitzvah shalei l'shma. First, give it to him on his level. Let him do it for ulterior motives, for a prize, for covet, for money, whatever. Meanwhile, he's getting used to it. It's like training somebody. Once you're trained, okay, now you're ready to the little next step. Ultimately, you come to a point where you don't need the Shalei L'Shma. You're a Keli for something that's L'Shma. And not because you suddenly became a Tzaddik, because you worked, all the years of training taught you that now you're ready to enter on higher terms. Until the point comes where you're able to enter even built mitzvah simsa through Eir, because you're emulating. You become like Eir, basically. This is the picture in that sense. Now, if you get this right, then you can start talking about Eira Kol Batz Musei and Eira. The question then is, what's going on Lifnei Tzimtzum? What's the Tzimtzum? So basically, in this context, Lifnei Tzimtzum essentially is the Me'ech HaRav. Let's put it this way, in the Mashal. Achrei Tzimtzum is Me'ech HaTalmud. So there's a lot to do Achrei Tzimtzum before you get to Lifnei Tzimtzum. But let's say a person has reached. So Lifnei Tzimtzum is starting to understand things how the Rav understands it. Now you're a Keli to go there. So first you're a Keli to go to the lower levels of Eir, Mispasha, all these things. But you need those levels because they're also, now you're climbing in the ladder into the mind of the teacher. What is he thinking? Until you get to a point where it's called Eir Kodim Kikad Musei, that the Eir is so bottled, it's Mamish Akol Mamish, where he says that highest Madrege, then you're going on God's terms already. You're now, you need that Tachos HaBitl to get there. So it's true, at the end of the day, he does see, but not through looking. By not looking, he ends up experiencing it.
That's the point of Yofis.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. Ufana is through Layiro. It's made it the So the bottom line is that generally speaking, Lifnei Tzimtzum, you're talking about how the Eibishter is the Me'ech HaRav is on his terms, not on our terms, and you can reach there once you climb the ladder. So you need to have that, because if you don't have that, you don't have it on. Remember, there's a mumutza here. You have to have God's terms, our terms. So generally speaking, Lifnei Tzimtzum, Achrei Tzimtzum, just those aces. You can say Lifnei Tzimtzum is God's terms, Achrei Tzimtzum is our terms, in broad terms.
So why do you need? Why do you need Lifnei Tzimtzum, the Eira Kol Batz Musei Stam, and the Eira Kol Batz Mamish?
For the same reason you need Atzilus B'riyah Tzirasiyah, because
later. But I'm saying before the Tzimtzum, why do you need those?
No. Well, the Eibishter needs it to create the steps for us to cut there. He doesn't need it for him.
It just doesn't end. If you can start making dividing Eira Kol Batz Musei, Faran Tzimtzum, so where does it end? Where does the end?
World and where it starts.
Where does this
No,
If you told me
I don't
till
agree.
the
One
symptom
second.
is the Talmud, before the symptom is right. Finished. Okay.
No.
But now you're going before the symptom.
Yossi, it's generally 3 madregas. Can move in the 3 is bleak vul madregas, but 3 categories. Let me explain. 3 categories are always necessary because everything is in 3. And the reason is 1 is mitzad the mashpia, 1 is mitzad the makabel, 1 is where they meet. Well, everywhere you'll find 3. Now, there's the 3 in the makabel. I'll explain in a minute. But let's talk about the 3 in the mashpia. Like in this lifnei atzimtzum. The 3 in the mashpia is like this. If you were able to get into the mind of your teacher, you'll be able to see 3 levels. One level is how he speaks to you.
Lowest.
The lowest. The easiest one is the one he speaks to you. You know, obviously, there's more than what he speaks to you. There's more going on. The next is how he is in himself preparing to speak to you. And then there's the third is how he is in himself before he prepares to speak to you. But it's still, he's still, right, there's still, no, there's,
before he's thinking how to speak to you.
Yeah, but it's like,
But that's the level of where he relates to you, but he doesn't even speak to you yet. But there's a yachas.
It's not atzmus.
It's not private.
In other words, let's put it this way. Let's talk from the Rebbe. The Rebbe is the best example. Yeah, right? The Rebbe is always the best example for atzmus. You know? Okay. So you have like this. There's no question that the Rebbe, how he is in himself, we don't relate to, you know. Maybe that's how he wanted to be before the Nesius, and that was it. The Noch hat sich verbunden mit uns. Whatever that means, you know. But that's it. And then the Rebbe is always going out to Fabrengen, and he's going to deal with Anash and Tmimim, and on their terms, he has to speak to them. So, but he has to set to them a message that he wants, not what they want. He has to speak on their terms. So you could definitely see many levels here. There's the end level is how he presents it, what you hear actually. Something we can understand. He wants us to go on shlichus, that being shlichus, mivtzoyim. The Rebbe's malbish in seichel.
His enemy wants us to learn Torah.
Pichazal, right? Mekedus. You know, some of it is, most of it, a lot of it is deeper than us. So, you know, behind this is a seichel that is deeper than what we're just hearing. And then, if the deepest place would be divus verstehen pnimis hakavana, you know, like in other words, what does the Rebbe really mean? No, but I didn't mean that in a political. I mean, what does the Rebbe really want when he wanted shlichus? Let's get that. He may not have said that ever in the Fabreina. So you can speculate and say he's fulfilling the mission of Yifutz Menesach Chutzah Mashiach, and he's fitting it to our generation. He's not telling us all the cheshbeinos why 10 mivtzayim and not 15 mivtzayim. We don't know why. So there's a whole level that's called batzmusei, so to speak, that never came out b'dibur. It even come out in the preparing the b'dibur. It's completely inside the Rebbe, but it's directing everything he's saying to us. So right there you have 3 levels. And that's really, you don't need to break it more. I mean, in India you could break it blik vul. You know,
give us the 3 levels that we can repeat it.
The way I would do it is when we speak to, let's say, our children, or anyone that you have a relationship with, you want to communicate something. I think children is a good example. You can do it in business. I can give you 100 examples. If you really apply it, I'm sure you can find your own. But let's say like this. You and your wife want to build a chassidus home. God blesses you with children. Early age, you don't speak with them conversations what kind of home this is going to be. You do what you were trained to do. You create a chassidus environment, right? Buy smaller svarim, mitzvahs, tilis yadayim. You send your children to school. You say that Shabbos table is I'm talking about the way it should be. I'm not talking now. So your children are getting, on their terms, basically what they should be doing for this. But you have in your mind, and you and Rebbetzin have in your mind what kind of home you want. You're not communicating that at all. That would be the second level, what you have in your mind. And the third level, kol batzmusei, would be, you know, why do you have that in your mind? Why you and your wife different than another couple? So the answer is, you at some point were struck by the Rebbe, the emes of Yiddishkeit. You know, I'm talking about your point of truth, thing you don't even talk about mostly. And a lot of people are mechanical; they don't even think about that third level. They just do it. It's at Kabbalah sale. But if you really think about it, there's something that drives you. That you may never. You know, one day your child will grow up and say, "Tell me, why did you commit to be a chassid and bring up a chassidish mishpach?" You may not even have the answer. You just say, "I grew up in such a home." That's a kol batzmusei type of thing. It's a driving force that's not really ISIS. No, kol batzmusei is not hashpah. Who says hashpah? No, the mashpia has mitzad him. He has the number one because the Eibush has mitzad did b'tachtenim. That's the kol batzmusay, maybe even higher. But let's just say it's kol batzmusay. That drives what happens next, but he doesn't ever communicate that. What he communicates is what we need to hear. And you want
to say the Nesava is the kol batzmusay.
It's a dugme. The Nesava is probably atzmus mamish, but it's close enough. It's like the tainug atzmi, whatever you want to call it. Look. You love your child. That love is an atzmus. There's a kol batzmusay part of that love. As a result of that, you're going to prepare yourself in the second level to speak to your child. Then you speak to your child, he may not even know why you're speaking to him right now. When the truth is, you're not speaking to him about technicalities, it's because the deep love that there's there. But you're going to say things to him that are the fiyadach. I could see this, you could create a whole model. This is pretty simple. To me, now let's take away from the whole thing from Elikus. Okay, let's talk business here for a moment. Let's talk, why are there three elements? Because every structure requires four things. There is really a fourth level always, which is atzmus in this case. You need to have a vision. Then 3 steps. Every process is 3 steps. You write out an outline, you flesh it out, and you conclude it. Everything is like that. Everyone writes a book, music, a business plan. The first step is b'riyah. B'riyah is chemer b'leit surah. Just write like basic principles. It's like the skeleton. Not even the vision. I'm talking about after the vision.
Strategy.
It's called an outline. There's a word for it. There's an outline. It's called a skeleton. You see it when every time you see a building go up, before you see what kind of building is good looking, you see a skeleton, you see a framework. Then you go and you start filling out the frame. You ever make an outline where you make just the headers before you go to the flesh out the subcategories? It's the main categories. I know, for example, every business plan used to have, executive summary, mission, assets, resource, blah, 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 tactical plan, strategic plan. Every business plan must have that. But one business and another is completely 2 different things, what you fill in. So after the skeleton comes fleshing out, which is, you see the tsura, and then comes the third thing, you have the final building. Everything exists in these 3 things. So in Inyan, the same thing within the mashpia's mind is also those 3 things. It's what drives him, so to speak, which he may never communicate. Number 2 is when he starts preparing what has to be expressed, and then the expression itself.
On the first level, he's saying what drives him is also a level of him as he is himself, without being driven. Driven already is attracted.
That's why good. So that's like the etzem before.
That's
yeah, you can say that. But remember, it's atzmus. It's not one thing. It's so much. So you're talking a whole different madreg. You don't get the 3 things. I got the many places, many ways you could explain.
Simon, in business, there's a concept of
Yes.
strategies, plans, and action.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
No plan.
Simon,
You see that?
it's brown.
Wow, that's a good price you got.
I paid the most.
I thought it was $5.36. Any hakdashas today?
No.
Schmuckle. I don't know.
Don't lose his place.
It's okay.
No, he says it's okay.
It is okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's exactly the same thing, yeah?
There's a few fixes.
Oh, they fix some things, yeah?
Different kind of paper.
Yeah.
Yellowish paper.
So Reisgesundheit.
I want to read this letter.
Right.
Explain it. Let me see this.
It's the same thing. It's a reprint.
Mama's the same thing. Really?
No, it's not. I mean, the words are the same, but the layout, the paper, the way the letters are on the paper are a little different. It's the same setup. I'm talking graphic.
It says they pick some toys.
Exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Mistakes, some mistakes.
I have to notice it. That's all.
Here's the letter, okay?
Yes.
The Mayan al Shailosov. This is a letter from Tovshin Tess.
11.
It doesn't say to whom. I think it's to the guy from France.
Someach.
Someach. So it goes like this. Imef Shalemer. No, my mistake. Ich shaykh lem be'er shlifni atzimsum shies bechiluk madreges. V'hari nemer alav be'etz chayim shu poshut shove b'ashva achas. Because kasha poshut. How could you say levels before the tzimsum? Everything is b'ashva achas. The Rebbe says Maina, Shaila Maina. Ma shenemer ala anal shu poshut, hainu be'erech seder ishtalshus. So lefi erech seder ishtalshus is poshut. Let's before he goes on. For example, in the mind of the mashpia, before he starts to speak, the fiyerech, all the levels he's going to speak to his students, his mind is it's poshut. The fiyerech them, it's all the same thing. They don't know the difference between one level and the next. But in the mashpia's mind, Is beferish a difference. You know? The Rebbe said hours it took him to prepare Rashi Sikh. What took him hours? The Rebbe's Chachma on his own to understand it doesn't take that much. It's about explaining it to somebody that's not him. That's that takes time. Which of course gives you a bigger amkus also, as we learned. But it's a process. So anyway, then you can tell. This which you say the Eir Posh is not just be'erach ha'elamus, kim gam be'erach ha'inyan degdima ve'ichlu sibah musubov. In other words, even higher than just the worlds, even the concepts of cause and effect, k'nima nichur. Ki kol zeh nasa rak al yedei Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum created real levels. So be'erach to the real levels, whatever levels they are. You say something comes before another thing. Like we said before, Zman. K'nima nichur. The fear of that, Lifnei Tzimtzum is all Pashut. That's what he says. Aval b'chol zeh ein a Pashut hamiti. You can't call it really the true Pashutas. U'muchach zeh ki Pshitas be'emes hainu achdus ha'pshuta. So it's a matter she'yeh shalem b'shnei inyanim. Real Pshitas is achdus ha'pshuta. You can't even say two levels. B'chol davar v'davar milvad atzmus yizbarach atzmei yesh beis inyanim l'chol ha'pachas. Hadavar u'ma shemahava eseh. So it's a basic logic. Everything in existence has two things: the thing and what made it. Only Atzmus doesn't have that. So anything has to have at least two things. Nothing is Pshitis Mamash.
Even
Lifnei Tzimtzum.
Even though.
Right.
Exactly.
Even Lifnei Tzimtzum.
What the pshat that's Chaim is Poshet.
Gabi.
So one second. No, he's going to give an example, but this is what he's saying. Okay. And Dover Mashal. U'kamoy bo'er hanal yasha eir yukayach hamoyer shaboy. Shu dvekusei b'hamoyer.
Inner Gufa.
Yeah, the air itself, air, and there's the moyer.
Oil is coming off with something. So the moyer is atzmus, or the moyer is also something that's
No, the Moyer Shaboy. Moyer Shaboy. In the oil Gufa you have to.
Yeah, the moyer says clearly that the moyer is not atzmus. Atzmus is more than moyer.
No, but he talks about the Moyer in the oil. Moyer Shaboy in the oil.
Yeah.
So in the oil Gufa, Franz.
Okay, so right away, so therefore, when you say Pashat Lifnei Tzimtzum, you're meaning Lefi Erech. And because real Pshitis is only when there's one thing, and that's only Shaykh and Atzmus, because everything else is at least two. There's the thing and the thing that put it there.
And you're saying three. Because if there's one and two, there must be something in between. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Go ahead.
That's true. But they said L'chol HaPachas.
Yeah, L'chol HaPachas. That's good.
The Kama Dugmois L'Pashat Be'erech HaLamata. And there's a few examples to explain something that's Pashat. In other words, completely like Pshitis. L'fi Erech, what's the... Afshu Hu Murkav Be'erech HaLamayla. Even though L'erech Lamayla, it's Murkav, it's made up of more than one thing. Kama Dugmois. And he's giving some examples. Examples of them. Okay. Kumei Dalad HaYesedis, Shehem Pshutim, L'gabe Shar Kol HaNevroim. The Dalad Yesedis, Eish Ruach Mayim Ofer.
each one of them.
Is Pashat L'gabe. You know, when you say nothing in existence is pure Eish Ruach Mayim Ofer, everything is a combination. So it's Pashat. When you say Eish, you're talking about some type of abstract thing, because there's nothing that's pure fire.
But it's really not.
No.
Hold on.
When you're
So
talking
the Fierech objects we know, like this piece of glass, a table, everything has the Dalad Yesedis within it. So the Yesed Atzmi, so to speak, the Yesedis themselves are Poshet, L'gabe this. It's just giving you an example. But, Umurkovim L'gabe Chemer HaYuli. But the four Yesedis are Murkav, when you compare it to the potential state of all Yesedis before the Yesedis. It's an excellent example, actually. It's like something like atomic particles compared to objects we know are Pashat. Because but when you break it down, atomic particles themselves are not Pashat L'gabe that where they come from. So it's a concept. It's basically when you go deeper into something, it becomes more. It's more obvious.
The more we understand that an atom is made out of neutrons and protons and electrons, so by us it's no longer Pashat. Not
right. Yeah.
That is no longer Pashat.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So there he brings that. He brings a Rambam. Fine. I'm not going to quote the source. Another example. Haneshama hamislabeshes beguf shehi pshuta be'erkei. The neshama, the gab of the guf, when it's mislabesh, is pshuta. Your body has arms and legs and organs. The neshama is intangible. What's the neshama? Neshama is like one force inside. You can't say neshama is made up of eyes and ears and nose, hands and legs and heart and liver, etc. Umurkeves be'erech etzem neshama. But be'erech etzem neshama, the neshama that's in your body is made up of parts. Keiches. Karihu mechaschalekes l'naran chai. Because the neshama is made up of nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai. Chid ve'oid. These are two gmois. And then the Rebbe goes, u'bechlalos u'be'emek. U'be'emek. It goes deeper. B'tzad ha'beira, hine hakol hu poshet b'tachlis ha'pshitas. And from the perspective of the Beira, everything is poshet. Because he doesn't see the difference. You see, everything is part of one.
Yeah, by us, when we look at lower,
One thing he's going to say, he's going to say. Let's. Because everything is Eined Movade. He's a part of Eined Movade. It's nothing but the Eibishter. He looks at the whole existence as extension. Eined Movade. Bli kol chiluk. Im lamayla mayla adin keitzer lamata mata adin tachlis. See, it's a medical letter. So there's no difference.
Shadam mile and Shadam mata was all things.
It's all saints. He's going to say soon an Aveda. There's a dugma Aveda. Mutzadek Hiluyim harei hakol hu murkav u'kanal. This is the deeper perspective. So he's now speaking now the whole thing. Mitzad the Beira,
No problem.
everything is Eined Movade. Mitzad Giluyim, everything is murkav. Everything is parts. And like he spoke before. So why is this Be'emek? Because he's not speaking about Lifnei Tzim Slachet, he's speaking about nor the Beira, everything is Poshet, everything else is Murkav, Lifnei, and so on. The Dugmosi Ba'aveda, so the Dugman Aveda, Ba'aveda, this is Meir Dikadugman, because you can see the the Rebbe's ideas that he speaks later. Ba'aveda Amitis, Hainu Eved Poshet, She'ena Mitzias Klal Ha'atzmi. In Emes Aveda, which is Eved Poshet, that doesn't have any Mitzias of his own, completely bottled to the Odin. Kol in Yonov Pshutim B'tachlis Apshitis. Everything, every Inyan of everything is completely Pasha B'tachlis Apshitis. There's no differences. Hechsher mitzvah, mitzvah d'Rabbanon, mitzvah d'Araisa. Ein kol chiluk etzlei klal, ki kulam legabei hem rak mitzias Odin. It's like what it says in the Kutei Torah, Zok lachte veitzim. For him, there's no difference. The Eibishter Zok la mitzvah sesa, mitzvah d'Rabbanon, hechsher mitzvah, mitzvah d'Rabbanon, mitzvah d'Araisa. There's no difference because he's an Eved. All he knows is the Odin Vilam is all his ton. No differences. V'zeh shebe mitzvah d'Araisa machmir b'sveikei b'd'Rabbanon mekel v'chilukim kiyetz b'zeh he ein zeh shemachalik bein ha-mitzvahs ela shemitzias ha-Odin k'mei sheniris b'krishma kach niris ba... One second. He ein zeh shemachalik bein ha-mitzvahs. When you machmir with one and mekel the other, it's not because there's a difference by you. Ela shemitzias ha-Odin k'mei sheniris b'krishma kach niris ba chiluk d'sveikei d'Rabbanon l'kula sveikei d'Araisa l'chumra. Because that goof is how the Eibishter reflects. And here he reflects in Achumra, here he reflects in Akula. The Rebbe says, Niris. Mitzis Odin, he says, Niris, B'Krishma, he says, Zetzachon and Krishma. Azay Zetzachon, the Chiluk Tvisen, Sveikei d'Rabbanon, the Kula, Sveikei d'Araisa. So even the difference is also just... That's how he wants it, that's all.
You don't get away with it.
Me'ein dugme b'teira ha'niglas, me'ein dugme, Rambam kol tzivuim d'Rabbanim hem ha'teira. El Rabbanim, the Hainu ha'teira l'shita zu, tzivu l'chalik b'neiim. The Rambam holds that even mitzvahs d'Rabbanim also min ha'teira. The only reason there's a difference because the Rabbanim said you should make a chiluk.
Salz the Odin.
Yeah, it's also Odin.
it's really one mitzvah, leisa sulu.
Yeah, salz the Odin.
Yeah. Ubechol ifani aveda luli hanal hakol bar bahar kova. So if you don't have this bittul, all I avoid is bahar kova. Ulachol apochis mishnayim. It goes back to the thing. Mekayim ha-mitzvahs va-mitzvah atzma. The person who's mekayim the mitzvah and the mitzvah. Yesh laharach b'chol zeh im yediani asher mukshe be'eze inyam hanal. If it's schwer, a bissl kann sich... So you can go to the oil and ask the Rebbe if you need some more clarity. And then the Rebbe adds, can move in something that just throws everything for a loop. Ha'ara, ein kain mekeim levayer ma she'ena mover. L'cheira. Lifnei tzimtzum, mahu ha'esa chilukim b'ha'er. Mahu ha'esa chilukim b'ha'er, kiven she'en sham elahu shmei bolvad.
No, but we just said mitzad us there is, not nish mitzad.
No, but he's asking who makes it. Since there's no two things.
In
other words, you're not checking so that's so Gabi the Eibishter, what are the chilukim? Maybe you want to tell me that everything else, but then again, you could say how you relate to Ayin Simpson.
So what makes it?
Us,
Not what makes it.
there
What's
is no
What's Asa? What creates them? In other words, if everything's pshitus and there's no hardcover, who made the first hardcover?
No,
That's
Maybe
what-
us pshitas. Where is the chilukim?
Anyway, that's a separate. No, because I'll tell you what. Once it's leading to the Eibush has to have Keich HaGvul. It's a whole thing.
maybe because
But-
there's no recipient and there's no one there to see it. So
He's not asking how there is. He said that everything Lifnei Tzimtzum is chilukim lefiarach lamat. He's asking how the chilukim were made if there was nothing. There was no
Yeah, but I
chilukim in
said-
the first place.
I know, but he said before, I said the whole thing is chilukim because it's in the Kabul. That's what it's chilukim. It's Adam.
But that's not what he's asking now. He's asking now who made it. Since Lifnei Tzimtzum is only Hul Shmei Balvad, who made dargas there? How could there be dargas? Where did it come from? There's nothing. It's like with Svaz Mitzvah Asuya. You know, each one has the mold, but who made the first one? Type of thing. So the Rebbe is asking. Chayim Shmei is the same thing. It's one. It means it's only one thing.
Where's this letter going to? Where's this letter?
The answer to this is Chelik Tezvav. Then he has another thing, a Samar Vova piece, also pretty interesting. I'm reading it because look. So I think the word Kol Batzmusa simply means Kol B'Mashpia. Use those words. We're trying to understand it how it stands inside the Mashpia, and he has 3 levels. That's the bottom line. That's the way I would
Would you say
simplify
Kol
it.
Batzmusa doesn't mean Kol and Atzmus? It's Kol Batzmusa is in the, it's not
Atzmus of
and
the oil.
Atzmus of the
Atzmus.
not
No. That's not the shot.
I think it
Era
is.
kol matrusa means in atzmos.
Who says?
it's why? Yeah, because you're talking about
That's what he's talking about.
He said the Fedish use the terms etzem ha'oil.
Musa, it means
No. In Eira kol batzmusa itself, there's etzem ha'oil and spashtos oil.
Etzem ha'oil,
I do
right?
it.
And then there's Eira kol batzmusa mamish.
Okay, to paste to this thing,
You didn't read your tzedel.
one second, but paste into this thing, and some in Torah Shalom he says that when we say Atzmus, we always mean Ayir, Atzmus Ayir.
So but whatever says Atzmus, I think.
However,
Haragi,
yeah, eminent, but
a wrench.
no, I'll tell you why. Because the reason is it's a bavornish because you can't really speak about Atzmus. As soon as you speak about it, it's not it because it's just a matter of this is semantics really. Ultimately, depends. Look, it all originates from Atzmus. That's clear. Everything is within Atzmus. So you could say the Welt is also called Batzmus.
Right.
Everything is
Okay,
called
well,
in Batzmus. We're talking about on whose terms it is. This world is not on God's terms. It's a different. It's after Tzimtzum reality. Look, if you want to really see how complicated this is, you have to think of
I'd
it.
rather
this
see
way.
how clear it is.
Right, I'm gonna say that.
I don't know the complications I have about it.
No. But I mean to just show you how this needs constant Haravanya to really just envision it. What Klotzkash. He just said, for example, this letter. It's everything's Eined Movad. So one second. So what is our perspective exactly? Is it a real perspective or is it just an illusion? So good, God created Tzimtzum and created a reality that we. Yeah, verstehst?
There's no.
So one second. Tovshech Chav Ches. The Rebbe has the beard and the
You just gave me
Shaykh.
something easy way out. The other guy has to go work for 40 years. Like for me, it's a shy.
What? But the question is even more geschmack. You're talking about Sefer Echem, he brings about, but Tovshech, the question gets more complicated. It's not just who's right. Let's say ours is an illusion, but then we have a big problem if ours is an illusion. That's what the Rebbe spoke in Tovshech Chav Ches. Kedem called Teda Zog Bereshis Baruch. Satan's Mashiach comes. Is it a game? It's just revealing that it was all an illusion and everything, all the Mesilas Nefesh and Aveda meant nothing. So the Rebbe says, he says, you could say that like Abba Noshim Karkena, but then you have to say all the tzaddikim, everything they did. If the tzaddikim saw it from the perspective of Ein Med Milvade, so their Aveda is meaningless. It's a whole sikha. And the Rebbe there answers from Sheikh V'Emunah, and the Alter Rebbe adds in Pei Gimel and Sheikh V'Emunah, Tzimtzum Likra Kelim at the end there. There's the Chassid Debur, right? Tzimtzum Likra Kelim, that you have to say that Tzimtzum is not just concealment. The Tzimtzum is a real Messias. The Zelber Ebershter was that Eined Milvade created a reality, and that what we see is not an illusion; it's real. And therefore, Aveda is real, and then when you Megala Lakus, it's real.
You go to the Bashman, you go to this, and then you have the eight.
Very interesting sikha.
And they're all talking.
Familiar with
Ooh,
this?
as if they're talking real.
Made it sikha.
Shechos, he's supposed to say such a That's the just like a bunch of Abraham talking.
Okay.
Robots.
Everyone has their personal petabur.
Now let me ask you a question.
So
Can I ask you one question?
only one, yeah.
Only one. The purpose of everything is the Salak of Baruch Hu is a right?
As is on uns.
tell me, how can it be that the purpose of everything is a favor in the medrash somewhere that most people
So
never heard?
famous, it's vibrating already.
A simple logical.
Jedi Dover will say it's farvorfen by you, but by them it's never farvorfen.
Okay, they know the whole. By then they knew about it, right? Just like they knew the entire qualitative kula, right?
Let me answer the question very simply. It's when you talk technically, it's a medrash tanchum here, vort there. You're asking a question on the Alter Rebbe, who brings in Perek Lamed Vav and Tanya. Some of Vav elaborates that there's 3 reasons before it's Nesava, in this Gala Shlemus Kechesov, begin the Shtamud, and all these different reasons. The Teva Tev Lehetiv. And they said, Tachlis HaKavon, the Tachlis is Nesava. So clearly it's a very Yisaitic thing. But, you have to remember Medrash, especially those who know how to read it, reflects on his Merumas and Torah. If you really want to ask the question, ask another question. Where in Chumash does it say the purpose of creation? So you have 2 things. You have in Gan Eden, La'avdil L'Shamra. Let's talk Psukim now. Forget about Nesava. La'avdil L'Shamra. And you have, by the Mishkan, V'asin L'Mizvah Shechanti B'Seichel. Those are 2 mission statements that you have Mamash and Chumash. And that's not Favarf. That's very, very clear. Basically. So if you look at Samach Vav, when he brings Nesava, he right away brings La'avdil L'Shamra. So he's basically, so really you could say the Medrash is an explanation on that pasuk. The Medrash Nesava, by the way, is on the Mishkan. It's not some. So you write the Medrash maybe, but let's define what that means. It means it means create for me a physical Mishkan, not a Ruch Nizdike, out of Kesef Zav and Necheshes. V'shechanti b'seicham. But I'm not getting into my Marach Hazal. I will rest among you. So the Medrash really Nesava just, so to speak, embellishes on it and adds the word Nesava. That doesn't say in Psukim. But they always bring Shuka V'amudei Sheish and Asas Shuka. So that's the Raya. So how does the Medrash know Nesava?
What is Shuka V'amudei Sheish?
How do you know it's Mishtake? Yeah, how do you know there was Nesava? Because what I just said is you can know from the Avdil L'Shamana, from the Shanti B'Seichem, you know that he wants a Dira B'Tachtein. But how do you know it's Nesava? Maybe it's a Rotzen, maybe it's a Seichel Dika thing. So they bring the shukah. My point is that the Medrash, when you really go into it, it's
adding, but it's...
Yeah. And then the Alter Rebbe, of course, makes the big deal. Nesava is Batz Musei, Taivan Shtokin Kasha, and so on and so forth. No, Nesava. Taivan Shtokin Kasha. Azafa Taivan Shtokin Kasha. The Rebbe's explanations. What I'm saying is, I had this question exactly, many, many years ago, but everything is like that. When Alter Rebbe brings something in time, he makes a small thing a big thing. Rest assured, it's thought through with all of my Morach Hazal, because it was
I'm not sure.
No, I don't mean Tzad Kabbalah Sale. I'm saying you could trace it. You could see why the Alter Rebbe, for example, starts Ibn Sechte Nida Mashbir Nesi. Also, if I've offered my Morach Hazal, you can say, but he makes it a whole thing, because people like that knew what's a Yisod, what's not a Yisod, and in a way you could say every Vart in Torah is a Yisod, but still, I mean.
Hillel. Rabbi Akiva. Where did he take that from?
Right, I know. No Jews live up to that one, so I understand where you got that all together. It's like Hepech HaMetzias. The Dihavot, right? And what world was he talking about? His Talmidim didn't live up to it. We don't live up to it.
That's why it's called.
Look, what can I say? It's made a dig geschmack to learn Chassidus and understand these things, and there's no question. The Alter Rebbe, who was clearly a critical mind, and a Baal Nikole and a Litvak, everything was rational, and he was taken by the Magid, was taken by the Baal Shem Tov. The Rebbe writes in a letter that anyone who says the Baal Shem Tov was not a Gaon Nifla, because you think a Gaon Nifla like the Alter Rebbe would have been impressed by not a Gaon. But the Rebbe, that's a Davar.
Hey, I'm
whoa! You gave me the brass, I missed it.
It's as if he gave it. The look was enough.
Das ist Fahrpettepur. Jeder einer hat doch am Snagi mit Kirbei, weißt du von? That's how it is.
High value.
If you slap him, slap his Snagi.
Moshe, ich bin ein nicht von der Spal von dir.
What do you think we need, Moshe? When you cross the line, when you get that look?
Schade, was nicht gern kein Patch da. No, give him a hand.
You mean that's soft? And that's ganz good. I know why you're here. You're checking out that we don't go off the reservation, right?
He's placed.
You're like internal affairs.
So what were you saying?
I'm saying is that when you learn Chassidus, I mean, I'm hardly the biggest expert, but what you did have is that the people understood what was they got the etzem of Torah. You learn all these pages. You start asking, where is this in Torah Shabbat in Torah Shabbat Peh? Where in the Gemara? I mean, it's pages and pages on Havana of Tainug Atzmi. There's no direct source of this.
Yeah.
But when you start looking what the market is, you start seeing this is the spirit of Yiddishkeit, and there's no question about it. I mean, you don't have to be a god to know that. You start looking, then you see how he grounds it and where it comes from. I mean, but it is a someone who, let's say, a skeptic, doesn't accept the Rebbe Rashab as a Rebbe. Starts learning, starts wondering: is this Chassidus? Is this philosophy? Is this whose seichel is this? So we don't have this question, but that's what Chassidus does. It's malbishit in a completely lang. But when you really read it, you see this is. I've been reading the Shalah the last few years. The Shalah is unbelievable. You read the Shalah, you mamish see the Alter Rebbe all over the place. You see where you see svaris and ideas and all these type of things. Maybe I'm showing b'derech hateva. Not that I need Shalah to be, but you can see how his talshus. You see,
Be careful, he's my grandfather.
the Shalah.
Yeah.
But you see that they said Alter Rebbe was a Shaloyid. Shalom Mara, but a Shaloyid it says. But you read it, you see it's unbelievable. The Shalah, you see the roots of Chassidus Chabad for sure. All over the way the Rebbe, for example, even that I worked in the Sikhs, you could see in the Rebbe's approach. You see the Ragachover, you see his father, you see the Tzemach Tzedek. Very, very more than all the other Rabbeim. I'm not saying you don't have the Rebbe Chazan from the Rabbeim, but a shnit of a mashal. This father very much the mathematics of the Rebbe, like everything's Yizgahal, the Shema Godim, the name, the diuk of a Maimer Chazal, taking every word and agadita and turning it into a whole. The Ragachover, of course, is the whole that approach, and then the Tzemach Tzedek in Ochol Chalkei HaTeira. I mean, you see it. If you know what the Rabbeim, I mean, as I said, each of the Rabbeim contributed their own thing, but you could see
every single one of these three things that you just mentioned.
It's not just
are style.
Look, they say the Alter Rebbe would have lived in the time of Tanoim, he would have been a Tana. And the time of Amoraim would have been non-Meir. I have no doubt the Rebbe would have lived in Alter Rebbe's time, he would have been the Alter Rebbe. It's not like the Rebbe came and the Chiddush of the Rebbe is that Parnas Lefi Hadar, he fits the same Torah to our generation. That's a ikar. I mean, some Kusharim think that to say that is not kaskash, is what I just said. They need to make the Rebbe greater. But I don't understand that. Without the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe, it's quite great enough, That to me is insecure Chassidim, when they decided which Rebbe is greater than the next, That if you don't say the Rebbe is greater than Frierdiker Rebbe, it's felt in this kashrus. Shtusim Gemurim, in my opinion. Huh?
Did the Rebbe say that?
Shalshelo Sa'ir.
Didn't the Rebbe say
Ein
that?
Ka-
Didn't the Rebbe told, so you're trying to tell me that Frierdiker Rebbe was greater than Baal Shem? The Rebbe said, yeah.
Okay, but
No, I'm saying
by virtue of
but the same Rebbe also said when they asked him why it says right here Shalshel Sa'ir, you see in all this for him, why the Rebbe, I think it was Pesach Sheni Yud Aleph, the Rebbe said, "Mir gefragt, was schreibe ich in Shalshel Samoir? Was hab Shalshel Sa'ir, das doch der Rabbeim." She says, "Weil Moir nicht doch in Shalshel, als eine Sache." Yeah, there's certain Giluim. Look, first of all, there's the Chvivus of Dein Rebbe. So there's a certain thing like who said it? Chaim Arozov. The Rebbe's guest from Moshe Rabbeinu. Well, on the Rebbe, he gleibt to Moshe Rabbeinu. That one. So that's. But I don't know if he means it. I think it's more chvivus. It's like chviven divrei sarfen on divrei like that more. I don't think it's mitzad etzem mehiniya. That it's like for Rebbe Malain. If the Rebbe told you, some people say Rambam, they don't say chitas. Not because it's more chvivas the Rebbe. I'm not saying justifying.
The Rebbe says
Asher will see. Asher will see. No, but chitas are bechaleng head for Rebbe. I'm saying you have to distinguish because
no, he's saying that these Chassidim are insecure.
Doesn't always come from security.
The problem is the people that I know said it are insecure. That's for sure.
Okay, fine.
There's some people. No, I don't see why does one have to make the Rebbe
What he's
greater than
saying
the Rebbe?
the same one has to stress the ganze Zeit. The same one who has to stress the ganze Zeit. This is the ikir as aggressor, as opposed to believing his aggressor is one
I'll tell you what I have a problem
and
with.
stressing it the whole time. It's like,
You want to know what I have a problem? When people start telling me or saying, and I hear this, I mean, it disturbs me greatly, that everything the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe always says the Frierdiker Rebbe started, the Rebbe's really started it, and the Frierdiker Rebbe's L'chayev from Frierdiker Rebbe. It was the Rebbe working. That the Rebbe ran Lubavitch from Paris, or ran it, in through Merkus or whatever. First of all, even at Ayin Beis, the Rebbe said, I mean, it doesn't need my askama. The Mesilas Nefesh, he set into motion things that no way but the Rebbe was involved. But people say that anything that the Frierdiker Rebbe really set into motion is really the Rebbe.
so last the Rebbe, from what the Rebbe said all the years.
No, that's just the Rebbe's bittel, the shver. He means himself.
And the Rebbe made it with the Rebbe. It's not a facade.
Whatever, however you turn it. I mean, this I can't. That I cannot have. Because ultimately, then it becomes really cult worship. To be very blunt, because you think. I mean, the whole Rebbe is because he's a mamalamok. The whole Frierdiker Rebbe is because he's. They all spoke that way. The Alter Rebbe. I mean, nobody came and be machadish. The Alter Rebbe was a real machadish. He was miyasid chassidus Chabad. The other Rebbeim were out. I'm not taking away. God forbid. I mean, the Rebbe. I only have exkashas to the Rebbe. I don't know the other Rebbeim. But I mean, the sprach is just, I don't know, it sounds very to me like almost like a popularity contest. It's trying to compare. The Rebbe, every time he would mention the Rebbeim, there is Chochmah, there is Bin, he says, Achotz has mi, Anoshim kerkenu mi yadei, this, Abelefi, vi mefarstein, like that. It's a very dangerous area, that's what I have to say. That's all. It's not, it's not, they stated the Rebbe Rashab, first the Rebbe Rashab, so when he became in the early years, so he was, so someone came to see him and didn't know it was the Rebbe Rashab. So he said, the Rebbe Rashab, will send the name Rebbe, sagt sei, go and add So the Rebbe Rashab said, so he asked him. Oh, no. So let me start from the beginning. The Rebbe Rashab was traveling. In early years from Persian. Someone met him and asked him, "Van kommt he?" So he said, "From Lubavitch." So the Yid said, "The Cher in Lubavitch da Naya Rebbe." And as I do, he started speaking Shvachim. He asked the Rebbe Rashab, "MS?" So he says, "Aber kommt nicht zum Taten." That's what he said. That was his answer. So they say the same thing by the Rebbe. Someone came to Masjid, the Rebbe would be Merkus often in the beginning. So there someone came in and then asked the Rebbe, wants to get an appointment to see the new Rebbe. And the Rebbe says, "What do you want to see him?" So he says, he hears it's a new Rebbe. Maybe they can milas on him. So the Rebbe says, but they also say he's different, more modern, into college. So the young guy says to the Rebbe, "Junger Mann, was verstehst du nach Rebbe?" And then he met the Rebbe.
It says over here, to get to what you were saying before, but and stuff, stuff like that, and Tzavos Eilus comes after not from Atzmos, because of Atzmos it can be a Shinei in Atzmos. Mele, it's done through this because there is Bein Amer, and there is
There's no Shinei in
There's no Shinei in it. So what ultimately telling me is that Eretz stuff has a mind of its own, and it created a...
It's a good question, a very good question. I actually asked it to Rabbi Yale several times. Because also the thing with Shinui is a little weird. What's going on here? So they makes Oyer, so it's like he's taking.
Pretending there's no Shinui.
Oyer is like taking the fall, for the Shinui thing, and Oyer is completely bottled.
Yeah.
I think it's much deeper. It's not just about Shinui. It's about, you see, Atzmus in its pure form you can't talk in terms of before, after. Not just there's no Shinui. It doesn't. It's not impacted by changes, so to speak. So,
It'll be here for a while still.
I'm not sure how long. Yeah, we're here. Why? Gonna come back?
Yeah.
He'll come back soon today. I'm not sure exactly how long. We wing it, you know. So Eid is not just takes the full. Eid is Atzmus, so to speak. Atzmus projected into Metzias Nimtza. That's the key.
It's really not a Metzias because it's Bittul Tachlis.
Right, and Eid can do it because Eid doesn't have anything of its own. So it's like the examples they keep giving of the Shemesh. The Shemesh is not on earth, but the Shemesh lights up this earth. Not just a model, because remember, the Eibush is not Shemesh, but just as a dugna. So the Shemesh gives warmth and light to the earth, but the Shemesh remains in its place, never changes. Atzmus has keiches, but the Etzem, the key thing is to understand that Etzem never is mispashik, really. Etzem doesn't come out.
What's there?
It's not the Etzem, it's the hispashtus of the Etzem.
You say it's
No, the Etzem itself is not, Eid is not the Etzem. Eid is nothing but the Etzem, but Eid is, let's put this, the Etzem is not Eid, the Eid is Etzem. Let's put it that way. You know, like Huma Kemi Shalel and Ve'en Elam Mekemi. Let's talk from ourselves even. When we talk about Etzem HaNefesh, okay, we don't really understand our own Etzem HaNefesh. You know, I was going to say psychological, I didn't even get to that. Because that's where I think it really is, it can be really applied. You can't speak about Etzem HaNefesh because as soon as you speak about it, it's already not that. You know, Liba Lepuma Legali. The deepest things inside of you, even Reishad, even you yourself are not aware of. You have memories, for example, of what happened to you when you were 1 year old. You know the real root cause of every behavior. Why, right now, if someone insulted me and you together, you may get angry, I may not. Why? It's exactly said the same words to both of us. So definitely we have things inside of us that we're not aware of. You know, why certain buttons are pressed. Some things you are aware of. Huh?
It's called associations, mental associations.
And we're not even talking about Etzem HaNefesh. We're talking about even on a plain subconscious level. When you get into the Etzem of something, the Etzem always remains, it affects everything, but it doesn't go there, so to speak. So that's really the meaning of what I think with this whole thing with Eid is. See, he doesn't say this because he didn't write things except in the Miluyim that are not from my mother. If it doesn't say in the Maimer, he's not going to write it. But in the Miluyim, he sometimes will ask a question that, and will answer that more how he or others understood. So these are, remember, you have to understand, Chassidus, there's a lot of things written in Chassidus that are left open for dafka for a conversation like this. And they did, the Rabbeim Befeidish, I can tell you straight from the Sichos, confidentially even, that there are things that we tried to write out in a Sichot and explain a little more than the Rebbe did, and the Rebbe brought it back to a place where he left it ambiguous.
Unless you just didn't explain it right.
No, because the Rebbe could have opportunity to explain it differently, and sometimes he did. But there were things, I'm telling you, especially things from my mother that were written a certain way, and there's certain things that are left bedafka in a way that can be left to interpretation, intentionally. Because I think a big part of Chassidus is a partnership also. You learn this in, now you have to figure out how it applies to your life, and I may figure it out a different way than you do. Look, let's talk. You saw the book I did on Sfira Seimer.
Yeah.
It's one application. Why does Chassidus not do that? Chassidus is about Aved and Bir Hamidus. Why did Rabbeim not taiches? Kipshut in a Maimer. What's Chesed Shebe Chesed? What's Gvura Shebe Chesed? What's Malchus Shebe Malchus? The answer I have is because that's part of our Aved. There's many ways to do it. They give us the so-called ingredients. You have to bake the cake. Understand? So I think there's many ways to do it. There isn't one definitive.
I understand, but this is sort of earning something.
No, I'm talking about the explanation of what I'm trying to say. The bottom line is Etzem cannot come out ever. The Etzem always remains Etzem. However, the Eibishter to create has the koyach, like it says in Chassidus, he's not a moed, but he has the koyach to give Eid. Like he has a lot of koyachs. Chassidus says very often that there are many more things in Atzmus we don't even know about. We only know about the things that he revealed.
Right.
So one of the things he revealed is the power of Bilt Metzias Nimtza entering into the Metzias Nimtza in a form of Bittul. There's no other way. That's the Alter Rebbe's Chiddush, because since Eid is complete Bittul, that's why it could be Kodem Kekadmusei. You know, but Sof Eid is not Atzmus. And therefore, that which happens in the level of Eid is happening essentially how Elokus is Mislabish and Metzias. And there could be Shinuyim, because that's part of that Islam. But the Etzem never is affected by it.
The idea to make it Savas illness comes can't come directly from Atzmus, but comes from the Mitzvah there.
Because that's you're reading it literally. You're reading it literally.
I understand.
But try to understand conceptually what it means. conceptually what it means. No, by the way, he could have done it without Eir, but we would not have understood. Remember this. He could have done it without Eir. There'd be no shinui. No, that's an important thing. The Atzmus could have done it without Eir, and there would have been no shinui, but we would never be able to understand it, right? So it would be like the Ma'al Mesech. Yeah, he could do a lot of things, and we don't really. The Eir allows for Atzmus to do things, so to speak, in a way that we can relate to. It's really an interface. That's what it comes down to. It's a true interface. And the Chiddush of Chassidus is that Tachlis HaBitl. Because Eir has Tachlis HaBitl. Because as soon as you say Eir is Metzias, you have a problem.
So the fact that you say Eir made a decision to be South Salem is already sounds like Eir is Metzias.
You have a problem.
Yeah, because you're now no longer Atzmus. It's now
but the whole Chiddush of Eir is that.
That's why it's like Mamutza. Like for example, when we say Atzmus in the Gufa Rebbe, we're really, the Dugna of it is Eir. That it doesn't have anything of its own. Therefore, you're not talking about like Havdol of Abdol Yoshka. There's no Metzias here. If there's no Metzias, it can be a Mamutza. Because it's a Mamutza Machab, it's transparent. All it is an interface for us. It doesn't replace Atzmus. Let's put it this way. You don't serve Eir. You don't worship it. All it is a channel. I'll tell you how I understand it at a psychological level, which I think, if you relate to this, great. I just related, but if you relate to this, it's the best example. You know, if we were to really be ourselves, not shaped by society and pressure and parents and all that, and your etzem is able to express itself, what would it say? Most of us have no clue, because we don't go there. We're so much affected by everything.
This is us. Us is the whole environment.
But the etzem of a person, psychologically speaking, is be'etzem not expression. You don't really express it. It's not like you don't want to express it or you can't. It's just not something that has to be expressed. You know, you could say you love your child, you love the Rebbe. It's etzem hanefesh. It's coming from etzem hanefesh, which means nothing can stop it. You know, that type of thing. All you can do is express it in actions. You can't really describe it. I mean, some people are articulate; they can describe. However, the Eibishter wanted that the unexpressible should become expressed. So when you're standing by a Fabrein, let's say, and you sing a niggin, and you suddenly feel that skashus thing, you know, in a way it's expressing itself through the niggin. And there's a need in this world of expression to express the unexpressible. But it still remains unexpressible, if you know what I'm saying. I think that's like a big, big thing, especially psychologically speaking, to help people, like, that the deepest part of them find a way to actualize it. And I think in a way, like when the Rebbe Shlichus, doing something the Rebbe wants you to do, you're expressing something that is coming from a very deep place that's unexpressible. And I think that's a lot about what Etzem coming Begillah. Am I making sense at all?
To a certain extent.
I like that. It's Lefiarach. Pshit is depending Legabe Lamata and Murkav Legabe Lamata. Now, what I'm trying to say is,
it's muscle from Eir. The fact that he uses Eir as a Ve'enam Eir, so therefore it's Tachlis HaBitl. It has all the tchunas. At the same time, it's not Moir. So
you're going back to Haskell. I was trying to be a little...
I saw it psychologically.
No. I was trying to be a little vulnerable here and open this up to something that we men don't usually do, which is say what's really going on. You know? I'm not talking about every machshava.
Even when he's being vulnerable, he's guarded.
Okay.
He's being vulnerable.
No. It's all the fiarach with the chagaret.
Poor guys on
But what?
Is it?
It's fine. It's perfectly fine. I speak like this with the secular people all the time.
Easier.
Around here, those zijn de Chale generaal. You have to be very careful here. Here we're in the, this is the White House.
The base.
No, my point is like this, seriously. A real Chiddush Vabrengen is supposed to be a person supposed to speak really from... When a person went into Yechidus, why was it called Yechidus? It says in my Morim, Yechida meets Yechida. So what does your Yechidus Rebbe Nefesh have to say? I'm not saying to you, I'm saying to myself. That is... Now, we're befedish not trained to speak this way. People cannot speak this way. I say vulnerable, and of course we all have our defenses. But people are not trained. First of all, they're not secure enough to be vulnerable. You have to be allowed to be very strong to be vulnerable. When Yale writes in the first year, when he wrote this diary, when he wrote back to Israel, he said, Mitamol, this man was Azab Basechu. Pishem, the Rebbe, Sparad's Bebchias. And he was like shocked by it, because it wasn't the Rebbe, it didn't seem like it's coming. And it was, for him, it was like a recognition of the Rebbe's Megala, Etzem. He would suddenly say, for the Rebbe's Arop, from Shif in that Yisrael, and a chassid said, "Who does the Rebbe Mara?" Every time the Rebbe would start crying, and sometimes things we understood.
Why?
Because it reminds him, I guess, that because the guy said that Sira of the Rebbe was like the Rebbe Marash.
Yeah.
The chassid of the Rebbe Marash.
Was der gemeint?
I said, I said that Rebbe. He's a Rebbe was nicht gesehen. I don't know. You can explain it in many ways. Ich weiß das Bode. But then,
certain times I ever cried. Certain stories always there.
and anybody, when's the last time anyone at this table cried? I'm beginning to cry right now. Yes, he looks. When's the last time? I'm not crying because you lost some money or because you stubbed your toe. I'm talking about B'chiyas real cry. So I'm not. It's a rhetorical question. I'm not enough to answer. These type of things are the purest moments in a person's life. Huh?
I got scared that you wanted me to answer.
Yeah, I know you'd be the only one that would
Vor allem
answer.
Menschen, was weinen als allemal.
Yeah, in a
Jeder
Chanam.
selber weinen sie.
Yeah.
Das Afazak.
I'm not talking about complaining.
Das ist ein Wein Afazak.
I'm
Das
talking about
ist
the Kumpel,
We sang B'nei Echollah by the Shalosh Shudas, which is basement.
Ja, Menschen geweint.
Ich gewähnt.
Oh, du hast geweint.
But that wasn't because it reminded me of certain tziyurim. My point is that it's a healthy thing, and this is where you get closer to Etzem HaNefesh. That's the bottom line. When we speak Etzem HaNefesh, Yom Kippur is Etzem HaNefesh, Etzem HaNefesh. It says that the Arizal Zokt that a neshama.
Sounds very midistic.
This is back to my bad reputation. Mention me as my master. People say.
I had to say it. So that you fed you just
I wrote an article, as a writer. So I remember Simchas Tate, I was in 770, and someone says, "Hey, du kannst tanzen," So I wrote it was so insulting to me. They mean that a maskil is like a compliment. I feel like it's an insult, So I wrote an article, "Can a maskil dance?" Like that. I don't believe. To me, a maskil is the biggest insult you can give somebody. It means like he's not. He's like out of touch.
Yeah.
Just like a genius. You think geniuses are not normal. He wants to be a genius. You want to be a normal human being that understands. Anyway, my point is, so the Arizal says that the Rebbe has a sikh in Chelik Tes about it. That Mishalei Bocha Ba'aseres Yemei Tshuva Ein Nishmas Shleim. Right. Later, it was Chan or Kiseitze? So, whatever. And it's made a dik sikh. But what does Arizal mean? Because crying is an expression that comes from Etzem HaNefesh. And we don't have many experiences of Etzem HaNefesh. Let's be very honest. We live in external lives, superficial lives. No matter how frum and chassidus we are in this community, Etzem HaNefesh experiences are very rare.
Etzem HaNefesh is not the
far and few between.
necessarily.
Etzem HaNefesh is not just having a nice picture of the Rebbe on the wall. Let's put it this way. It's a real experience. And I'll tell you the truth, I think that in a way, it's much harder to have it in a community like ours than outside. When you're talking to people who don't know anything, you can be more vulnerable, you're more open, less guarded, not judged. And you can speak about these things. I'll be very honest. Shluchim will tell you. Shluchim, and they're much mushpayim. They have, I can't say etzem, but they have a connection that's much, besides, especially the people they get money from.
One of the reasons I love teaching 14-year-olds.
That's money is connected to Mechom Eitcha, right? Mechom Eitcha.
They want to know what it is.
Yes, that's
your wife say that.
They weren't.
The Alter Friedman. So in the first years,
Be yourself.
he didn't go to the old Friedman there. So the Rebbe,
Is Shver?
No, Shver's father.
Oh, Yankel.
Yeah.
No,
No,
Yankel was
Yankel.
his brother.
Yankel's father.
Then it's Rob.
Oh, you gedenk hem echt. Ja.
Hartstikke Rebbe.
Ze denken me
He
die
didn't come to
beter.
verbringen in Tafshin. A couple of years later, they started. They slept him in.
He also was in Samarkand with just Yeshua.
Oh, he's also
No,
but he was a
He
Polish
was a widower.
Like upon they slept him to verbringen. First year, he comes out and he says, weint mamisch wie a Zahnsereinigung.
But the Rebbe told Yankel, told your father, the current
Now we're getting to it.
I
I
can't
can relate to it.
Friedrich Rebbe's verbringen, das ist der Baal Shem
Ah, das Vater schon jemand.
Tov. Vater Shimon.
The point is,
the Baal Shem Tov.
Etzem HaNefesh.
the point is, it's very hard to talk about Etzem HaNefesh Haskoladik unless you experience it. That's what I'm really trying to say. It's like Ili Yadaita v'Yisuf. If I knew him, I would be him. And there's no way that you could talk Haskola Chaim Morgan about Atzmus if you don't have an experience like that or can identify with one. You're talking complete, like abstract mathematics. It has nothing to do with anything. That's what I really wanted to say. It took 2 hours to get there. As I get, like a plane, take off. You know, like that.
I understand. But
No.
in order to find it in yourself,
No,
you have
but-
to understand a little mathematics.
No, but you could
then you try
say,
to look in yourself.
but you could say, okay, so that remains locked in your Kedush Kadoshim, and that's it. But the Eberstedt Gewalt as Etzem zal kommen in Giluyim. That's how it is. He wanted his Etzem to become in Giluyim. And he wants our Etzem to come in Giluyim. So that's why we need to have Esir. We need to have his pashtus. And I think it's like, Churchill said that in a time of war, the truth is so precious, you have to surround it by an army of lies. I think by us, the truth is so precious that we surround it by an army of all kinds of defense mechanisms that, that's how it is. The porcupine, they say, has the softest underbelly skin. So they made these needles, so they protect it. The sabra, the sabra, they say, the fruit, the sabra, like an Israeli. They're abrasive on the outside, but sweet and soft on the inside. The truth is, even pearls, pearls, natural pearls, you know how a natural pearl happens?
An oyster.
An oyster, as a piece of dust gets into its skin, like in the eyeball, it's so tender, and it secretes this fluid that hardens into a natural, that's a natural pearl. What we call jewelry is basically a pain in the ass of an oyster.
Someone scratches.
Right, exactly. Someone gets a kratz because it's like a piece of dust in the eyeball. So by us, the tear duct gets rid of it, but by oyster, it makes a pearl. It hardens, and that's the pearls.
Was du gesagt,
Was tust du an der Sekretär in einer letzten Nefesh? You create pearls?
Was? Anyhow.
Sitting around, firing everything, sitting there. Stammer das so, krachen, so, hey, ich bin sehr weg. Jetzt kein Samen Casino dort gewesen. That's not why I come. I'll tell you why I come. I was there in Yeshiva at the college at that time. Now he was constantly get that. So do it young and talk to my brother. The same, I said. It's later, I'm all over the Verbracht, and he was talking down with Sanabas Hashem. That, we get a kukarum, and he said, he lost the like, hey, I don't know. So he said, advice this and that from this. You gotta have a little experience in it.
To reach, to identify.
I think just for the record, if you don't mind, I'm probably not going to be until next Sunday. I just sum up where we're up to here.
Yeah, we're good.
Because we didn't learn anything.
Yeah,
Did you answer the question of Eira Kol about Smoothie and Eira Kol about Susan Amish?
Wo fährst du
Ein bisschen mehr. We're getting somewhere.
Furnished.
Next Sunday.
I will be here.
Oh, we'll
Simon, I just
Yeah,
want
but
you
we'll
to
have
know.
more to cover then, so I...
Last week it didn't save, so if you wanted to
Simon, I just want you to know, and I want everyone to know, the bracha of this year, one manifestation. I opened up my office Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I was overwhelmed to the point I said, oh my God, why did I do this? Midnight Friday afternoon, midnight coming at 9. Moshe and Yossi, with a plan that little mashka on behalf of the entire Shia,
In 5 towns?
5 towns. And I said, Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu, that we have. It's beyond, he's saying things that are beyond description. The feeling he gave and the schus that we have is beyond description.
What do you think we wrote on the zettel? Du sollst sicher sein zu verstehen, was meint Eira Kol about Smoothie Mamish.
I'll tell you one.
What do you think of that?
I got it. That's great.
That's okay.
That's good.
The question is what kind of plant they got him.
We Chazim had a little, you gotta hear this. The Rebbe, Tavshim Ches, after the Rebbe passed away, everything changed in the Fabrengens. The Rebbe stopped after Pesach, stopped Rashi Sichos, Pirkei Avos, Rambam, Kutlei Vitzchut, everything. Then my Morim finally, Chukas, was the last Maimer regularly that we could record. After that, even my Morim stopped. Chukas Mem Ches. I'll tell you an interesting footnote about that soon. And that's it. Then the Rebbe said, if you remember, my Erev of Pesach and Erev Shavuos, from the Stände, with Anigen, the ganze Sache. So For die was gewundert that if a will kenner, just wasn't doing it, and then there was another mimer that came out. There was a big debate after Chazorah, an internal debate. Talk about Erakol, you got to hear this. This is amazing. So, my opinion was, Gabriel was there, and Shalom Charatonov, and David Feldman, the whole gang. And it was I think it was Noyach Nun Aleph. It came out as a mimer, and it wasn't clear it was a mimer. It was like the same, but it was it's changechabt a bissel. Rebbe said a posuk, a word from a mimer. So Shalom Charatonov said that mach a mimer from that. So I said, look, if the Rebbe is saying my morim every week, and this week clearly for 3 years you're not saying my morim. You have to have strong reason to make a mimer, not strong reason not to make it. If it was regular times, we'd make it. And Rabbi agreed with me. Then they said, we'll prepare it. The Rebbe doesn't want to be Magi, he's not Magi. So it became a debate, that of course, Shom Khartov had the unbelievable answer. He said, nein, the Rebbe sagt my morim the last 3 Yorech. It's an Erakol Batz Moshe. Yeah. That was it. So that's what I started doing.
Jetzt verstehe ich. Sie hat 3 Stunden verstehe geworden.
That's what he said. That was something I couldn't disagree with, because
Sagt
that's what Yale said to him. Yale, Shalom, du verstehst, du tut sich nass. The father doesn't call. What's his call? He says, yeah, aber der Shabbos hat man gesehen, ein bisschen Avrok.
Sie gehen nicht Mamisch.
Right.
Alle andere Wochen ist Mamisch.
Right,
Other Mamisch.
Because if andere Woche kommt, dann mach ich Mami jede Woche. Done. It was a glimpse.
What's that ahead?
They sent it in, that I was Magiyat. I listen, Mugiyat, it's holy. I'm not questioning it. The question is, l'chatchila,
Yeah.
It's not a problem. The Rebbe could be, when the Rebbe says a sikh of 10 minutes, you could have 1,000 things coming out of it. It's Torah. The question is, what should be done with it, like that. So that's a dogma of Kol Batz Moshe. Why did I say it was Chukas Memches was that last mimer, officially? And the end of the year, when we made a sefer Maimorim, we weren't sure, so we wrote to the Rebbe that according to our Hashara, Chukas. And the Rebbe didn't answer. He just left it. So.
How was it printed in
So what was your opinion?
Oh, the piece I wanted to say was an interesting thing. I think Yosef, who said it to me, Svitzchuk often maybe, told me, or somebody mentioned it to me, the Rebbe, was it, Chukas Memches, was exactly the amount of year and to the month of the longest time that any Rebbe said Maimorim. 37 years.
More than Tzemach Tzedek is this.
The Rebbe Rashav, 37 years and 8 months.
Basic
from Yud Gimel.
So the Rashab said more than Tzemach Tzedek?
Some said lived longer, but the Maimorim was longer Rebbe. He was longer time Rebbe. From Mem Gimel to Pei, it's a long time.
Yud Gimel Tishrei.
From Yud Gimel Tishrei to Beis Nissen is.
The Iber Pei?
I don't know if it's Iber. I don't think so. But it's 37 years, I think, in 8 months. Calculated.
It's not even 6 months.
So maybe 37 years. What's it?
No,
Tishrei to Nissen.
7 months and change.
Yeah, 37 and 7, I think. 37, is it 37? Mem Gimel to Pei? Yeah, 37 and 7.
Why did the Rebbe stop saying it?
No one knows.
Wait, the first minor of the Rebbe.
No, I'm saying, but it was
Sukkot.
Sukkot, yeah. Kesser, no. I'm telling you, I think 37 and 7. And you'd
No, it's no 7 months for sure.
6 months then.
6
So
months.
I'm telling you, but at the same time, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph, till Chukas, Memches, count the same.
Counting it out.
You're saying it's a little
From
more,
Yud
it's the
Shvat,
same.
Yud Aleph, Maimorim.
It's the same or a little more, Zogstein?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Nicht mehr is.
Lishmer.
Wow.
Is that a coincidence?
Wow.
Huh?
Including the extra Bimer or two that the Rebbe said afterwards.
But that's not regular. That was just we're talking about
on a standard basis, on a schedule.
Ongoing.
It's a little bit less. Sorry for messing with you.
It's not less. It's exactly counted. It's not to the day, but it's to the month.
Yud Shvat. Was Tafshin Yud Iber?
I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
Hello. Das ist es.
Chukas is Tammuz, right? Right?
It's the end of Tammuz, it's exactly.
Keep one.
I don't know if it's to the day. It's definitely to the it's within the month. I mean, it's a pretty interesting coincidence.
Very.
We don't know what it means, but the Rabbeinu, this was a big thing. To not do things longer or shorter than others, whatever it means. Another interesting footnote, if you want, is that the Rebbe, first years, my morim were Bas Lagani, Frierdiker Rebbe. Then the next years, the Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel was mostly Rebbe Rashab. Yud Zayin, the Rebbe started Chazrin Mamorim for Rebbe Marash. Chavav, he started Chazrin Mamorim for Tzemach Tzedek. In the Mems, in the Lameds, Mamorim from the Mitla Rebbe. Lamed Ches, Lamed Zayin. It was very, the longest Maimon from the Rebbe is Lamed Ches, Maimon from the Rebbe. And the Mems, he started Lamed Kislev. Lamed Ches, yes. Vashafti B'Sholem. That's the longest Maimon. Like it's like a style, Mitla Rebbe style, like went on and on, a few hours. In Mems, he started saying Alter Rebbe's Maimorim.
Huh?
In the Mems, the Alter Rebbe started chazing a lot of Teireh. I'm telling you, Moshe went through all the Rabbeim.
Yeah.
And the last sikhs were Nekudis, like the Baal Shem Tov. I mean, this again is just an observation. Early years. Ayin Beis.
Ayin Beis.
Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Tezvov. Yeah.
Mamish.
Straight Ayin Beis. And Yud Zayin, he started Rebbe Marash, and the Rebbe actually said that in Shiva they started in Maimorim from Rebbe Marash. It's interesting as you think about it. And the last sikhs are Mamish and Kudus. There's some observations from inside.
Fascinating.
The Rebbe was very calculated. People he would always look at what Maimorim he said the previous years. It wasn't just, it was like,
People used to look.
The Rebbe.
I know that he used to go into the library. The Rebbe had that nothing from the year before.
They would say in the cities. Then when the men start saying the cities,
yeah.
Yo.
Middle of Reish Vav.
Yeah. Mamish middle of Reish Vav.
Mem Samach, you went through the whole thing.
Mem Samach, yeah.
The two types of sosim.
Yeah.
That's lunch.
So this is all connected to what we're speaking about because
You know what? What's the pshat Yosha and Erchezer?
that's a hard one.
Hey, the Rebbe said it was longer.
He lived long.
That's
No, the Rebbe. He was Rebbe 38 years.
And
No! Yeah! Chavav was in Stalag, right?
yeah.
Chavav Pei Yud Gimel Nissen. It starts Tes Kislev Peches. It's 38 years.
So,
And this is 37 years.
but he says my morim.
Tzemach Tzedek didn't start my
I don't know. I asked right away that Tzemach Tzedek. He says my morim was different. I asked right away that Tzemach Tzedek was different. Tzemach Tzedek was longer than Rashab.
30, almost
But,
a year long. Almost a year long.
I mean, my morim was different. I don't know.
First of all, someone said the last few years didn't say that Maimorim is raised not well. So it's less Maimorim.
He says my morim. Sag mir, what pshat Yosha and Erchezer? I mean, we catch on him again, so might as well.
But before you get to Yosha and Chezer,
Yeah.
the context of all this Hadvarim, you know?
Go ahead.
I fixed down. I feel before we get into anything else.
Yeah.
The rest we'll figure out.
I haven't figured it out, so I mean,
We only want you for another hour, not for another 3.
I understand. The review is not just for you, it's for me, by the way. I'm trying to understand it all. We're trying to we're learning together here.
By the way, that's the hardest part, I think, in 9 days, is to keep the
That's the
What's the hamshake?
What?
You expect to keep a hamshake when you learn it once?
I'm just saying, that's
What's the time?
I'm saying that's what's very hard. It's very hard. To learn them, they
Maar
know.
de letzte, du gibst das Schirr mit
The bottom line is the Nekuda here.
I'm asking you, how they figure them.
The bottom line, Nekuda, I'm not going to speak
It's
for
very
just a
hard
few
for me
minutes.
to learn how to hit a baseball. He plays once a month. It's very hard to train myself to want to hit a baseball. You're not doing anything to train to hit a baseball.
It's still hard.
The flow of the Hemshech is clearly the concept of Mamutza. Das ist sicher.
Right.
The Mamutza, Keser. The first part of it, now this whole section. Remember, all this is going to be concluded. He's going to go back to still the 5 meanings in Omen, Vayhi Umen. It's all he's going back to it. When this finishes, it goes back to Shavuos. Huh?
Yeah.
So the whole thing started with the thing with Mufla, the two things in Aleph. All
I feel like you might say Pel is a different pasuk.
Same
pasuk?
Same pasuk continues.
Yeah. So it's all the abir in that. But what is the details? Is the dilemma is constantly, and he keeps going back and forth. The whole thing we keep talking about mamutza. Is it l'fi ha'makablin? Is it l'fi ha'mashpia? So he got to Keser, was not good enough because Atik always remains the mashpia. Atik always is the makabel. So the answer is Chochmas Timah. Chochmas Timah has both. To understand that, he went to two things in Chochma. Keich ha'fla and Keich ha'yerida. Chochma, Pashta Chochma. Chochma has these two things. It's emotional masik and chorif maksha. So Chochmas Timah also has these two things. So there's a part of it that's connected to Atik, the Tainug of Atik. Spoke the difference between Tainug and Rotzen. And there's how the Tainug is comes in Rotzen, it's only the Makif Ketzenis. And there's how Tainug is in Chochma. Chochma hu ha-Tainug, he said. You want a building, you want a home, then you conceive of ideas of how to build that home. So Chochma clearly is a keli for Primis Atik. So you have now the Chochma. So now comes the dilemma the other way around. Okay, fine. Chochmas Timah has both these things. So then, how does Chochma Gluya connect to from Atik? Back to this, The answer is it comes through Sidus. Since it comes through Sidus, it connects that way. So again, we connect it to Atik.
To where it comes through Sidus.
From Chochmas Timah to Chochma Gluya. That's the Sidus on the head. That's the Sidus. So it comes through Sidus.
So Haora Daora B'derech Diluk.
Right, B'derech Diluk. That is Pedic basically.
Can do that.
Oh, that's all.
Yes, you can do that.
No, it's good. It's very good. One second.
Just like Golgalt, kann man einkritzen to that.
Golgalt is Arich, that's the Makif, Rotzen, Kabbalah Seir.
Reish Dalet.
Reish Dalet. So here God did this. Okay, so therefore, then it goes the whole thing with the Mazel. That's doch V'netzer. The Mazel from...
No, then he asks, L'cheira by Yud Gimel Tekun Dikne, it goes all the way in.
Then it goes the other way around. L'cheira, the Yud Gimel Tekun is Sidus.
It's not B'derech Diluk.
It's not B'derech Diluk. 1 second.
Here, Achadayin Enzim is Yashiv. Achadayin Enzim is Yashiv. And he asks, Yud Gimel Tekun Dikne.
Right, so his answer is that Gimel Tekun Dikne is Primis and Chetzenius. So Primis Gimel Tekun Dikne Takanam from Atik, right? And that has the power to make a Tikkun Kol Afgamim.
One second. In Reish Dalet doesn't answer. In Reish Dalet he finishes the question. In Cain, Eich B'chinas Mokel L'Chochma. Finished. He's still asking the question. Reish Dalet.
Mazel V'netzer.
Yeah, question, exactly.
Okay, so the answer in Reish so here's Beis Madregas, Primis and Chetzenius, and these are two Madregas in Stimus. He's going to say these are also two Madregas in Gimel Tekun Dikne.
Soon, he didn't go back yet. Now it's down Mem and Samech. Mem and
Samech, the two Dargas in Chochmas Timah. Timah L'fi HaMekablim. So it's
and that's Era Kolobatz Musa and Kolobatz Mamish.
It's Timah Be'etzem.
You didn't get it on Kolobatz yet either.
He did. Reish.
Top of Tov Yud Zayin.
Yeah, Reish. You have Era Kolobatz Musa and Era Kolobatz Musa Mamish.
Okay.
Which is Mem and Samech.
Havaya and higher than Havaya.
Right? Havaya und Havaya Onoisius. Okay, verstehe.
Concept.
Okay.
But he says, Kolobatz Musa is Yichelis, the Gavad, Masha Bicholte L'hoyer.
Kolobatz Musa Mamish.
Yeah, is that a Shmei Kolobatz Musa?
Yeah, Mamish is the whole difference.
Yeah.
Not making this up.
See, Kameshikosa Be'erech B'drush Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah, right? The Eir is Kodim Kekad Musa. That's Vayelech, yeah. Okay, so this is the Helam Atzmi. So you see, also basically, also lifting out Tzimtzum, you have these two things. Okay, and Reish Vav, he goes back and he goes further and explains it according to the two Makifim of Yer Yasher and Yer Chez. Correct.
And there's a Yasher Chezim Mitzad Mashpia and Yasher Mitzad Mekabel.
So that he explains. Mitzad the Mekabel is the Maimaram
before exactly.
Mitzad the Mashpia. Mitzad the Mashpia. So that's the two dargas of the Sosim, basically.
Right.
Makiv the Chezid is more how it is be'etzim the Mashpia. Makiv the Yasher is how it's
Why? What's the Chezid? How do you define that? Why do you say that? It's more better than a chaser. It reaches something and then comes back. How's some makabel? I mean, it's not really.
He doesn't explain why it's called Makiv Der Chazer here. And if you look
But he
at
says
other
that's
places-
the Chacham Stimo, that's the one.
Yeah, the higher Chacham.
Yeah.
I don't know directly from here why it's called Makiv Der Chazer. Does not know looking on the Mamor, to be very honest, and I don't want to speculate what it means exactly. It could mean Mitzad Er Chazer here in the context of, like he says, Helam Acher Helam, because he's going back, because you're going deeper into your own mind, back. So that's the Er Chazer. Usually Er Chazer is Mitzad Makabel, you get a reflection. Talmidei Yesh Mekulam.
Right.
But here it's not that way. But it could be that it means is that in order to reach the Makabel, the Mashpia has to go deeper into his own Seichel.
Okay.
That's why it's Er Chazer. So he's going deeper in order to go out.
What
Makiv Der
is
Yasha.
it usually?
Er Yasha Er Chazer is usually Shemesh and Levana is the best example.
So then Oshem
Mashpia-
is Hechen.
Er Chazer is Hecher, the Shemesh always. Because Talmidei Yesh Mekulam. What means Hecher? Let's define Hecher.
The Yerech is
Well,
Hechen.
Beside the Megiluyim, Yer Yasha is higher. So Etzem Er Chazer is always higher. Talmud Yerushalmi, Talmud Bavli. These are the classical examples. Talmud Yerushalmi is Hamshachas. We learned it earlier. Talmud Yerushalmi is without kashas. So you have klarkeit, but you don't have tifkeit. Kashas bring tifkeit. Er Chazer, the Levana has a depth that the sun doesn't have.
What depth does it have?
Like Talmidei Yesh Mekulam.
No, practically,
The power
what do you
of-
see? In the fun itself, where do you see that?
And
it makes the waves go.
No. Let's talk first Beruchis. You talk about Yisrael, Daimon, Levana.
Okay, and
Main
then,
Levana. Umas
Half
Ilam.
Shinuyim.
Umas Ilam, Daimon, Main L'Shem. Shemesh doesn't have the power of renewal. Shemesh is always the same. There's no renewal.
Renews
There's no
everything else
chiddush.
every year.
There's no
you know, when you
chiddush.
said the Lashon of Ur,
There's no chiddush.
Ur by Levana.
Levana, there's chiddush.
That's the Levana, not the Ur, but okay.
Shlomo Kabach says that the Eir Levana,
Rav Shlomo Kabach?
two people who love each other, you see them staring at a moon. You don't love them staring at the sun. There you go. It's romantic. I had to say it b'shem Emri. You can't say this b'shem Emri, but it makes it richer. You know? I heard it, what can I say? He says at night. Night is when people come together, not by day. The power of the night is the power. The truth is, according to what the power of Er Chazer is the power of Makabel. When you say why Talmidei Yesh Mekulam, why not? It says Rabbi Sai Harbi Kibalti Mi Rabbi Sai Harbi Kibalti Mi Chaverai. Why Talmidei Yesh Mekulam? L'cheira, you're going down to people much lower than your seichel. Because what comes back is required for you to go down, requires you to go much deeper. What comes back is a depth you would never reach on your own. So that's why it's called Er Chazer. Remember the name.
Not that you have to withdraw to the recess of your seichel, though. After you give it up, you realize how deep you went.
Both are correct. The Talmud, bottom line, causes you to reach much deeper in. So the Levana, physical light, it's weaker light, but the truth is there are plants that grow to the moon, that do grow on the moon. The moon does affect the tides. It never brings these things. You know what is the blood slush? Megid Yeshad, Megid
Twitch,
Yeresh.
Yeresh Yerach.
Yerachim. So you have the Yerech has a certain power. Hachedesh Hazeh Lachem was said by the Levana, the Mekaz Levana, not the Shemesh. I mean, even though the Birchas Hacham, etc. But the concept of the Levana is the Gashmis. In Chassidus, it talks about from the Zeh, less Lama Gamoklum. Levana has no light of its own, but as a result, because of its bittul, it has much greater light in a way. Its light is more powerful, but not powerful in Kamus. It's Echus. Remember, the Levana's power is Echus, not Kamus. The sun is Kamus. It's the bottom line. So we talk about Er Chazer Er Yasher. Talmud Yerushalmi is the style of Er Yasher. Remember, we're talking here about Hashpah. Er is Hashpah. So Hashpah that comes, Nisan is Er Yasher. Tishrei is Er Chazer, for example, says in Chassidus. Tishrei comes after the Chet Egel. We do Tshuva. Shavuos is Er Yasher, Yom Kippur is Er Chazer. I mean, I'm just giving you examples. It's hundreds. Baal Tshuva is Er Chazer, Tzaddik is Er Yasher. So Tzaddik is definitely more powerful Okay? But the depth that Baal Tshuva comes to, a tzaddik can never reach. I mean, you have this is the classical examples: Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi, etc., etc. Lamaila Malchus is Er Chezer, and Zoh is the Mashpia, is Er Yosher. That's usually how it is.
Give examples of Aryasha and Archaiza.
The meaning of it is simply put: Er Yosher means a light that direct light coming from Mashpia to Mekar, transmission directly, straight. Er Chezer is reflected light, retractive light, whatever you call it. You know, light refracted.
It's not bounce. It's more to it. I think than bounce. It's not like a mirror. Vice versa, the you see in the Levana, or you see the Mashpia, sees what in the recesses of his mind where he wasn't able to megal himself. So that's it's not just not a bounce. It's a whatever. Right? So megal is some sort of deep thought.
I heard the name of the who was that? Baba Sali. Rabbi Sarah told me. One of the reasons the Rebbe didn't go to Eretz Yisrael, because after Churban Beis Hamikdash, the tzaddik becomes Pnei Chama, and Eretz Yisrael is Pnei Levana. The Rebbe just gewollt Hashem the Levana.
Das ist sein Wort, ist das.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Frierdiker Rebbe, the second, they wanted to
Those
go
are
a second time.
that's good, huh?
The Frierdiker Rebbe wanted to go a second time to Eretz Yisrael. It's had the Gimel, I think
You
it
see in the
was.
letters,
And he was going to take the Rebbe with him.
There's no money, I think.
He was going to take the Rebbe with him. He was trying to take the Rebbe with him. It didn't end up happening. The Rebbe doesn't ask. The Rebbe says, "You'll come with me." You tell the Rebbe and your husband, our son-in-law, you come with me.
Shkach sin. Sagst du mich? Das ist schwierig.
It's wisdom.
Alright, it's all piling up. It's gonna come out in one shot.
Russian, he's let us know the
It's
Russian.
the Zeichers ein Simon. Moshe and Yossi will tell you how they met.
Love at first sight.
Was it Er Yosher or Chezer?
It was,
That's what's Elaine.
no, it was,
was Shafter
Shvira
wedding.
Sakelim.
The same wedding that
One second.
Beryl Shem
Yossi,
poured
Yossi,
threw the glass into Penina Feldman's at her own seat. That same wedding. Oh, this was at the Goodning's wedding. I'm sorry. This was not at the Feldman wedding. This was at the Goodning's wedding. The Krinsky wedding. When Pinchas Feldman made a wedding, Shemtus knew Levi Shemtus got married.
Right.
So Penina, her daughter's getting married.
Yeah.
Beryl Shemtus, what something they were saying in her face.
Why? What did she do?
Probably came over and hates something to who knows. Who
In her
knows?
face, her own daughter's wedding.
Actually, that's what you should do if you're Chassidish. If the Mechitz ever is tampered with, tear up the hazen. You shouldn't have done
Wie Lucia's Mama gesagt zu Michal,
Wer ist das hier?
Lucia Rifkin. Und sie mir gesagt, Bestes. I just heard about a week ago. 2 weeks ago. Beweis mit der Haus.
When I'm called it?
Ja, whatever. Harab am Beis, sie mir gesagt.
Besses.
What happened? The ladies ran when he did it?
No, in the 40s, ich weiß, I wasn't there.
I think it was the 40s. I think it was later.
Later?
I think it was later.
So who was the perpetrator?
I don't know. I was surprised to hear the story because she was known as a Rebbitzin, a very special lady.
Sharp mouth.
Or maybe